Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, my name is Dave Scott. Thank you for joining us as we delve into Skinwalker Ranch and high strangeness in Nevada. Chris Bartell is here, and we're in for a great treat with him for the next 2 hours tonight. Dirty Filth is here with another cartoon, and the best part about it is all of you are here as well, including Race Fan in the gold medal position, SJ with the silver, and B taking home the bronze medal tonight. Who else we got here? We got Chris 716, Bar Madison, Michael Morris, thank you for coming on in, Robert Lamoth, Kenna Chef Chris, Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, and Karen in the Woo Train, Roy Boy and Paramarv, good to see you, Operation Shutdown, Lisa C, Dragonfly, thank you all for joining us. Paramarv and Lee the Bee. Lee the Bee will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Continuing on, let's say hello to Deidre and Brown Dwarf. And who else is here? Woo Child, how you doing? Noble Patrick, Laura Lobbs, Abbott Hoffman, good to see you all. High Eternity Eternal. And Human Carl is here. We got a Human Carl sighting, a proud member of the United States Air Force. Thank you for your service, Human Carl. We very much appreciate it. Number 16 in your program, wearing a good old Canucks jersey tonight. Starting at right wing, Lars Jansson from Stockholm, Sweden. T-Bone, my man, nice to see you. And who else do we have here? We have, let's scroll on down a bit. Tim Mothman and his goatee. Pixie Lara, good to see you and your purple hair. W. David Page, good to have you back. And Marty Burback. Thomas Rock is back. Thomas Rock will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio if you don't mind. To the right of the studio. Susan Alloway, Little Cam on Twitch, Ozzy, all of you, thank you for coming on in. Hi, Pam Harris. And who else is here? Skip to Malou, good morning to you. Dave Walters, good to have you back. Hi, Rex Goodrum. And Corey, Jojo, welcome to SOR Chat. Thank you for joining us. And let's scroll on down. Ozzy, good to have you back. I think I already said that, but I'll say it again. That's okay. And let's see. Oh, let's check out our Facebook. See who's on Facebook time right now. And is Facebook going to allow me? No, Facebook's going to be Facebook tonight. And let's try this way. Hold on. We'll get there. Waiting for camera. What the Sam hell here? All right. Oh, it's using my... Why the hell is Facebook using that camera? How stupid. There. Well, goodness me. God, that's terrible. Terrible. All right. There we go. I don't know what the hell Facebook is doing, but it is way off base tonight. Way off base. Anyhow, let's continue on, shall we? Audacious Amber, thank you for coming on in. Super Knower, Crave Dog, and Algaray on Twitch. Nice to see you. Digger Dog, good to have you here. Hi, Sensational Shelly. Little Robbie Minas, how are you, buddy? Nice to see you. Hope you enjoyed Skid Row and Buck Cherry last night. And who else is here? Major Lee, good to have you here. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. And who else do we have scrolling on down? Sandra Kincaid, Jeremy Jones. I think, yeah, you always got to have a nice curve in the hat, man. Good morning, Ian in Castle Dude over in the UK. Hello and welcome to the radio side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Chris Bartell is here. We are going to be talking about Skinwalker Ranch and weird high strangeness in the mountains of Nevada. Join us here momentarily as we say hello to Bill WD-40, who is currently lubing us up for tonight's show, because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. You do not want to go in with any edges or curves or things that go bump in the night. That's why we got Bill lubing us up as we speak. The super chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show. Hi, Deborah Norrisworthy. And, of course, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. None whatsoever. So do me a favor. Throw those horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. You can join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a power show of high fun tonight. Chris Bartell is going to be here to talk some Skinwalker Ranch, as well as some high strangeness in the mountains of Nevada. Then in hour number 3, Steve Stockton from Among the Missing is here to tell us a spooky story. Follow that up by Courtney Marcassani, who will have the UFO report. All right, let's get right into it. First time on this show, Chris Bartell is a 10-year U.S. Air Force veteran. He specialized in security forces and was also a cadre officer for Ground Combat Training Squadron at Creech Airforce Base in Nevada. After the Air Force, Chris went into working for the Department of Energy as a security officer at, a certain base that might be in Nevada, might not. We'll let you figure that one out. And from there, he found his way onto Skinwalker Ranch in the days when it was owned by Robert Bigelow. Now, he is working with people like good friend of this show, Carl the Crusher, working on some high strangeness cases in the mountains of Nevada. I'm very excited to have Chris Bartell on the show tonight. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're a fan. You listen each and every night to us when you're working the night shift. How you doing, my man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
When you joined the Air Force at such a ripe young age, did you ever think that, 15, 20 years later, your entire life would be about UFOs, aliens, ghosts, and other high strangeness?
No, I did not. That was never in my deck of cards, I guess. That wasn't really something I had planned for, but I've always had an open mind to it as a young kid, as most of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, with the pop culture and stuff. So I was always interested in it, but I never thought I'd ever end up in the heart of it, basically.
Okay, so, there's so much to this, right? Because you told me when we were talking before, you always had a real love of the paranormal.
Yeah.
Did you have some experiences growing up?
I'm from a very small town in Kansas called Hillsborough, Kansas. And back in high school, there was an incident where we had a substitute teacher, and I think my graduating class was like 43 at the time. So it's a kind of a community where everybody knows everybody. And we had this substitute teacher who came in one day, and she had recently purchased a property outside of Marion, Kansas. And she asked if any volunteers would come out to help fix the place up. Her whole idea was to turn this place into a bed and breakfast. So me and a couple friends volunteered to go out there on a Saturday, and we ended up going to this location. It's out in the middle of nowhere, for one, and it's a giant limestone old farmstead. And historically, it's there's now like a historical preservation about the place now, but back then it was privately owned. And this is probably in 1995, 94, 95, into 96. And it had pretty much all the stuff that you'd see in poltergeist movies happen there, with disembodied footsteps, doors closing, voices. And what made it even creepier, there was a cemetery in the front yard of this farmstead, and there was no dates on the tombstones, just names. So it always had this creepy vibe. And then it wasn't until years later that I learned that limestone actually can hold energy, like residual energy. So it made sense that this location held on to so much energy, because I think it was built in like 1889 or 18 something, but it had a lot of historical value, and it was a very creepy place. So I was introduced to the paranormal, I guess, at a very early age, not really looking forward to it, not looking for it, but it just kind of fell on my lap, I guess.
The fact that you have believed in the high strangeness and everything, I mean, you've worked at some pretty incredible places. You worked at Area 51. You worked at all around the Nevada area and around Nellis Air Force Range, Indian Springs, Tonopah, in all of those areas, and at Creech, of course. And then you make your way over to Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, for anybody who's in the woo and really enjoys the high strangeness, science, and experiences, you lived it, man. You lived it.
I was very lucky. I kind of got the best of both worlds, which kind of keeps me grounded, I guess, because on the professional side of my career, I was exposed to the places you just talked about. So when it comes to like the UAP topic or the UFO topic, I kind of have a different perception than most people, where I believe most of it is, based on air power, global dominance. But also I came from a spiritual side of that as well, because my mother, she grew up on Indian reservations her whole life, and she's Cherokee. So she raised me to be very spiritual and open-minded at a very early age when I was young, just as part of my upbringing. And so I've kind of always meshed the two together, where I do pride myself on being very spiritual and open, and I do meditations and stuff like that. But also on my professional side, I've been lucky enough to work at some of these areas where I've special access programs and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I ended up at Skinwalker Ranch. And so prior to coming to Skinwalker Ranch, I had already spent a majority of my career, working for Area 51 or Nevada Test Site or Creech Airforce Base, Nellis Air Force Base. So my eyes weren't really on the skies too much. It was more on the ground, because I wanted to treat the ranch more of like a crime scene, and it was my job to collect that evidence or data.
When you got hired by Robert Bigelow and the Skinwalker Ranch team, did you know anything about the ranch? Did you know where you were going there, or what it was all about?
I had no idea. I had no idea about the place at all, period. I was familiar with like Goldfield, Nevada, in the haunted hotel. And in 2009, I did an investigation there with some friends, with Virginia Ridgway, one of the original caretakers there. So I was into the paranormal stuff, but I had never heard of Skinwalker Ranch, or we call it the ranch. And how I got the job and everything was kind of interesting. And I was not prepared, and I didn't even read the book Hunt for Skinwalker until like maybe a couple months after I started working out there, because I didn't want to have any pre-notions to experiences or something, And it was pretty interesting.
how do they introduce you as a new hire to a place like Area 51? Let's start off with Area 51, then I'm going to find out
Sure.
about Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah. So how I got to Area 51 was basically, a long story short, my wife and I were both stationed at Nellis Air Force Base. And in 2010, or I'm sorry, in 2006, I got out of the Air Force active duty and went over to the DOE side of the house and got a Q clearance and worked for the Nevada test site where I was a security police officer. And then my wife was also stationed at Nellis. And in 2010, or I'm sorry, in 2009, she got orders to Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana because the Air Force was kind of downsizing. And she's from Montana originally, so we thought that would be a great move. So we moved to Malmstrom Air Force Base. I left the DOE. I left a great paying job and an incredible job. I love working there. And I'm still close with a lot of guys who still work out there. And we moved to Malmstrom Air Force Base. And shortly after we got there, she found out she was pregnant with our first son. And the Air Force was kind of at that downsizing. And she said, they gave her the option to get out of the Air Force. And she said she didn't want to deploy anymore and have a child. And I fully supported her decision. But I told her, I said, well, there was no jobs really at the time in Great Falls, Montana, that's to support a family. And all my ties were back in Nevada. So literally I started making phone calls after we made the decision. And I packed up my truck and started driving back to Nevada. And obviously the first place I called was the Nevada test site because I had just left there. But they were on a federal hiring freeze, and I couldn't get back in there until that freeze had lifted. So I started calling some other old Air Force contacts of mine at Nellis, and one of them that eventually led me to Area 51, which was at the time the contract was CSC, Computer Science Corporation. They held the contract for the security side of the house. So I got in contact with my old Air Force supervisor. We then got in contact with them. And because I had an active Q clearance, I basically, as I rolled into Vegas, I just rolled into the area where you in process at for 51 and got hired immediately for a escort duty until a security detail opened up full time. But it was only a part-time gig and I needed a full-time job because I have a brand new baby coming. So another friend of mine in the Air Force was like, hey, did you know so-and-so? He's got something with some aerospace company in Nevada that also does security. I'm like, okay, cool. So I call him up and he just says, hey, there's a ranch in Utah that we got to secure and it's an aerospace company. Are you down? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Is it full time? Yes. And so that led to an interview with Colin Kelleher, who was the project manager for, at the time, Bass. And I got hired in 2010 with Bass. And when I got hired, it was in 2010. So it was there was only 8 of us total left pretty much with Bass at the time, associated with Skinwalker Ranch. And so, I had an interview and then I was hired with Bass full time. And nobody knew that I was working 51 part time because obviously you can't tell people you work for 51. So I had kept that under the radar until a full time spot opened up. And that's how I got to Skinwalker Ranch in a roundabout way. I know it's kind of a long winded answer, but that's how it went down.
No, I love it. But I guess what I'm asking, and because the rest of us really wouldn't know, when you get that job at Area 51,
yeah,
how do they introduce such a secretive place to a person who's never been there before? Do they take you into a mess hall? Do they take you into or do they just throw you right to the wolves?
Well, it's kind of how you get there is kind of have to be vouched in. It's about who you. When it comes to that world, it comes down to who you know, really. And so you're already going there with a mindset of like you've already operated in a professional standpoint with the Air Force or whatever branch of service. They most look for guys who were in the prior service who know how to operate, basically. And so you go through in processing and you go through like an espionage course and everything else. And then eventually you end up, I ended up with the Janet detail. That's where I started at when I got the full-time gig. But yeah, you go through interview process and they slowly it depends on your background, what you're doing. If you're like, I was security out there. So my world was a lot different than other people's world. I didn't really mix with the other people But being security, you got to go all over the place, because I think people have this misconception that, every time there's a priority level 1 resource or some type of asset, it's protected by human personnel. Everything from nuclear weapons to special access programs to special aircraft, whatever it is, it's always got a human element that's protecting that from, people that shouldn't be in the area. And so that's kind of my background of where I fell into. So I already had an idea of the area because I had worked from the DOE side at the Nevada test site, which is a sister site for Area 51.
Right. Okay. So were you then one of the what people call camo dudes?
Yes. Yeah.
Very
Yeah. For 51, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So my follow up to that is, what really happens when you cross that line?
You get arrested, and then you call local county, and they come and give you a $250 fine. You call, I forgot the name. It's been so long, I forgot the county you call, but they come and arrest you and slap a $250 fine. Sometimes it's $500 depending. 9 county, you call 9 county, and they come and deal with you because you're on federal property. So it's really kind of an interesting situation, So you're going to get fined, you're going to get hemmed up, yeah, and depending on where you end up at, you're going to get, not bagged and tagged, but you're going to be escorted off the property, and you're going to be in handcuffs, and you're going to be sent to the 9 county sheriff's department and get fined, and then released. People don't understand that Area 51. It's the area is so huge. There's so many natural wildlife and stuff that if there's the whole Storm Area 51 that happened in 2019, it was kind of a ridiculous thing because you don't want to get anywhere close to a hardened structure, thankfully, because at the end of the day, that place is a location where new technology is developed and tested for American freedom or for air power global dominance, basically.
No, I hear you. Let's switch over to Skinwalker Ranch here.
Sure.
So you get hired by Colm Kelleher,
yeah,
who checks out your resume and says, "We need this guy here." And I'm curious about that because, how does that go? How does an interview at a place like Skinwalker Ranch happen?
It was interesting because I didn't really know the details of the ranch. So the initial interview was done in Las Vegas, and it was a normal interview about normal security questions about what to do in this situation and what's the difference between this and that, and your background, and then the conversation switched to basically Colin was flat out, it just said, "Are you open to the paranormal?" And I was just like, "What?" At first, I didn't know how to answer because I had an active Q clearance, and if you say things like that, openly, you can lose your clearance. Because back then it wasn't taken very seriously, like it is now. The whole topic now has gone more mainstream. But back then I was very cautious of what to say. But I thought to myself, you know what? No, I'm going to be open about it because I am very open to the possibilities of everything. And I told him I had some experiences, Goldfield, Nevada, and then the house in Kansas where I was a kid. And I didn't really talk about my time in the DOE side of the house. And that was pretty much how the conversation went. I went downstairs, and my partner, who I was serving the Air Force, came down and said, "Hey, you're hired." And then it was like a month later, not even that, I was boots on the ground at Skinwalker Ranch.
Like, what kind of questions do they ask you on a resume or in an interview like that? Besides, it's pretty weird that all of a sudden, "Hey, what do you know about the paranormal?"
Yeah, that's kind of how it went down. They ask you normal security questions like, "What do you do if you have trespassers on your property?" And stuff like that. But that's basically the question: are you open to the paranormal? And at what piques your interest into the paranormal? Have you had any experiences and stuff like that? And I was just open with the whole interview, and I'm glad I was because my time on Skinwalker, it definitely changed who I am now, for sure.
Mm-hmm. As you went in your life at Skinwalkers, we got about 4.5 minutes to go before we go to break at the bottom of the hour. Did you expect high strangeness to happen? Or was it just like, I got a job to do. this is what I'm going to do. I'm hired to be security, and that's all I'm going to worry about.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect because nobody told me anything. And at the time in 2010, there wasn't anything online to even research about, really. And I looked at it as just another job site, with a professional mindset of like, I have a job to do. I have a newborn baby on the way. I have to spend my 2 weeks out here on this ranch and then go back to Vegas and then come back out. His rotations out there. So it was a lot of time away from home, which was definitely a negative thing, but you had to endure it. But yeah, I was open to it, but I wasn't like, I guess, searching for it at first. I wasn't really diving into it. It wasn't until a couple of years into it where I was really trying to push the envelope of trying to experience and solve the big mystery, I guess, of the ranch.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, how long were you at the ranch?
From 2010 to 2016.
So you had 6 years of working high strangeness full time.
It was-
And
go ahead. Yeah, it was definitely, yeah, that's one way to put it for sure. And I would like to get into detail about that because it's very important for people to understand. During my timeline, there was only one officer out there to secure that site towards, after 2011. So you have one officer to secure almost 1,000 acres of land. It was extremely difficult on a security aspect. But on top of that, you're trying to gather data and collect evidence and, do your best on investigations and doing experiments and stuff like that. So you're always kind of operating in the red zone basically while you're out there.
now you decided to leave after 2016 when Brandon Fugel bought the ranch off of Robert Bigelow.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to leave? Was it just time, or was he bringing in his own team?
I didn't leave Bigelow Aerospace until 2018, but in 2016, when Mr. Fugel bought the property, we asked. At the time there was only a small handful of us operating on the property, and I really wanted to do a proper changeover with the new team to give them all my 6 years of data that I had collected, and also on a security standpoint, show them avenues of approach on the property and security deficiencies that they can expand on that we try to do ourselves, and that was denied. And we never were able to have that conversation. And I always thought that was very strange, but you continued on. And this is also in 2016. I never thought the ranch would be a mainstream topic like it is today. That's why when people ask me about the ranch, it was never about entertainment for me. It's something very personal, and it's something I take very serious. So in 2018 is when I was approached to come out there as an advisor.
Right. Why so personal?
Because I devoted so much of my time and energy out there and sacrificed, and not just myself, but the guys who are out there as well, because I represent a small group of guys who are out there operating on a very unique situation with limited resources, limited, no backup, no cell service. And it took a toll on a lot of people for sure, some negative, some positive. But yeah, it was very personal for me being out there. I sacrificed a lot for that ranch.
Well, I guess in layman's terms too, if you really enjoy what you do and you fall in love with your job, you take pride in it and treat it as if you would your own.
Yeah, I loved it out there. I loved being out. I wish I could have moved my family closer out there because that's how much I love the Uinta Basin. I absolutely love the environment out there, and I have a strong connection to that property. And I just really enjoy getting any chance to go back out there.
Well, the next half hour of this show, we are going to kind of get deep in and give it an inside look at what Skinwalker Ranch is like with you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And then in hour two, I really want to get into what you're working on now, because, I mean, it all ties into high strangeness in that Nevada, Utah area there. I mean, I don't know what it is with that area, but it's like Ohio times 2.
Yeah.
And I just think it's great, and I'm so excited that you're here. And I want to give a shout out. I don't usually do this, but our good friend, your good friend, my good friend, Carl the Crusher, in our chat room tonight. And we always love it when Carl's here. He's such a great guy and such an ambassador for everything that we do. Thank you, Carl, for coming in live tonight in our chat room on YouTube. Chris Bartell is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We will be right back talking more Skinwalker Ranch when we return. Stay tuned. All right, we are clear, my man. So just as a reminder, our audience on YouTube and the podcast, you've listened, can hear us, but our radio side cannot.
Okay. Is there if I go check something real quick and come back?
Oh, yeah, go right back. Yeah.
Right back.
Let us say hello to Kim Inari. Jenny White Bear, thank you for the super chats, along with T-Bone and Major Lee. Mark Sanchez, how's the Hawaiian shirts coming? You picking them out for Reno yet? Let me know. Big J, good to see you. We have 254 people watching right now, 193 on YouTube. Or maybe I better update that because I don't know. See where we're at here. Yeah, 193. Where are they all watching today? 194 YouTube. There. 55 on X right now. 55 on X. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for watching. Do us a favor. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell. And for anybody who's new to this show, wondering what we're all about and why we aren't talking, is we are a live radio show combined with a live YouTube and podcast. And we want to make sure that we have to time out for our radio station so they can go to commercial break. So that's why we do it. You may not like it, but it's just the way we have to. But do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell wherever you are, and we'd appreciate it. Thank you, Kim, for adding to the super chat tonight. And Sensational Sherry, good to see you. And yeah. I have a little stat that shows me the Doug Shelby. That is awesome. You having fun, Chris?
I am. Thanks so much for having me in here.
Oh, dude, anytime, man. Anytime. Pinzer, how are you? Dirty Filth, you're looking good down there. Is there any blob sightings yet, or is she being a diva? She's divaing it up again. Damn. I'm trying, guys. Super Knower, how are you? I even had Filth have a talk with Blob earlier today about her attitude, now that she's becoming a star, all of a sudden she doesn't want to come out on time. Filth, how did that conversation go?
She's I think she's getting to the catnip, Dave, to be honest. Went downstairs the other night. She's just covered in this stuff.
That's all we need around here is a stoned cat.
Unbelievable. They don't follow any protocols whatsoever.
Little bit of fame goes to her head. Next thing you know, she's a catnip addict.
Yeah, passed out in the sunbeam.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Hi, Vanessa. How are you? Mm-hmm. I do have some Area 51 dirt right here.
That's awesome.
From Rachel, Nevada.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
I got one of the mugs.
Nice. I got that T-shirt.
I was out there with Carl and Chris Lato and Brent Stone November last year. It was fun.
Carl may have like 3 million subscribers on YouTube, but his beard makes me jealous.
Very impressive.
He has the perfect beard.
He does.
He really does. I don't know if he's shaping that himself or if he's going to an actual barber shop to get that done, but that is high quality bearding right there.
He spent a lot of cosmic coin on his current avatar. Yeah.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. God, he's talented.
He is very talented.
And a gorgeous beard too. I mean, it's just what a combination. What a combination. All right. We have about 1 minute to go here. Science blob tote. All right. Let me see what I can do here.
Show everybody the Special project, Dave?
What special project?
One with the blob?
You mean the stuff I've already put on the store that you haven't paid attention to?
I'm sorry, Dave, but I gotta feed
Blob
the
has
cats
a
all day.
poster. Blob has a poster, a pillow, and a T-shirt already.
Blob. She doesn't even care.
No, it doesn't care. Doesn't care. All right, guys, we got 15 seconds here. And don't forget to shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. You can actually be appreciative of wearing your Science Blob T-shirt in public. Here we go, everyone. Here we go with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears. Reminder to all of you that if you missed this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We now say hello to our good friend Chris Bartell, formerly of Skinwalker Ranch, Area 51. If there's something you need secure, hot damn, he will be your bodyguard for it. Chris, thank you for being here, my man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right before the break, we were talking about, you joining Area 51, or pardon me, Skinwalker Ranch, and some of the questions they were asking you in your interview and everything, and then they just kind of let you go and do your thing, which is patrolling literally 1,000 hectares of land, or acres of land, pardon me, and you got to do it on your own. There's nothing stopping anything from skinwalkers or UFOs and cattle mutilations from actually taking you away. What, dude, that had to be scary. Had to be scary.
After the first year out there, it was, I'm not going to lie, it was definitely scary. It was definitely a lot of times where the hair in the back of your neck stood up a lot. But it wasn't until like year 3, 4, 5 into 6 where it became like a second home. And that's when I started, sleeping on the mesa with the dogs at night and really diving in more on the spiritual aspect of the property, with meditating and all that stuff. But yeah, the first year out there was definitely a lot to get used to. And I'm from the country, so I kind of chalked up a lot of the stuff at first to be just normal ranch dynamics that maybe have been embellished a little bit. But if you weren't used to that environment, if you came strictly out of the city, which some of the guys on my team were from, like from LA, and had never seen a cow before, and you threw them out there on that ranch. Yeah, it was a little tough for a lot of people, for sure. It took a while to adjust.
What was the feeling like? You mentioned that sometimes it was scary. Did you always feel like you were being watched?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like no matter what time or day, you're always being watched. Especially in February, I think it was like February 2011 when we went down to one person out there. Before it was 2 people, and then it went down to 1. And then it really felt like even though you're out there alone, you still felt like there was a presence out there or something was definitely watching you, whether that was nature or whatever else. But it definitely, it was weird because there were some months I'd be out there and there'd be nothing. It'd be a normal ranch, and then there'd be some weeks where it felt like it was more high intensity, like things were not right. The dogs were, because we had 3 dogs at the time, and the dogs were acting strange, and everybody's energy was off. So it was kind of weird how it went up and down a little bit. The feelings did. But that first year was definitely tough.
Man, I can just imagine what that would be like.
It's kind of like, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I kind of compare it to like if you ever in the military, you deploy to an unknown location for the first time, and you're in a new country and everything's kind of new and woo and whatever, like scary, not scary, but you're on edge, you know. And then after, towards the end of your deployment, you know, the year mark or the 9-month mark, you feel more adjusted and at peace, and you're kind of ready to go home. And that's kind of how I felt during my time out there.
Awesome. I want to ask you, before we get too deep into some of the experiences you had at Skinwalker Ranch, I want to ask you about a lot of the critics. Former employees have come up and said that there's a lot of fakery going on there. Nothing actually happens. We've heard from critics from Stephen Greenstreet to Erica Lukes and many others who have claims that the ranch is a farce and that there is no paranormal activity, there is no UFO activity or cattle mutilations or nothing like that. When you hear that critique, and after 6 years of putting your hard work into that, what do you say about that?
I agree with some of the things they say for sure, because I witnessed it firsthand during my time out there, that there were some instances where there was a rational explanation or a way to debunk something, and it was overlooked. That was kind of how I fell into my photography out there. The very first day I was on Skinwalker Ranch, the guy who was training me was excited to take me to the old homesteads and do some sit down. We used to sit down in these lawn chairs out there and try to make contact with ghosts or do EVP sessions and stuff. And during the process, you take pictures. Well, he didn't know I was a hobbyist photographer. So we went down to Homestead 2, and it's probably, 1 o'clock in the morning at this time. And he fired off some pictures, and he was excited to see what the results were. And the results were orbs everywhere, and a lot of it was just backscatter because you use flash photography in a super close environment, a dusty environment. And so when I told him, I said, "Hey, that's called backscatter," he got very upset with me, and he said, "No, this is orbs." I said, "No, that's legitimately backscatter. It's not what you think it is." And I said, "Look what's happening." I said, "You're taking a picture in a dusty environment, and there's 100 orbs in it, and the dogs are sleeping on the floor. There's no energy here where the dogs are alerting." So that our dogs were our biosensor. Now, if the dogs were alerting to something and a combination of orbs or whatever, that would get my attention. But he didn't understand the normal fundamentals of flash photography. And that, I guess that went on for a decade before I even got there. And so when that happened, I was like, okay, wait a minute, what's really going on here? So the first week I was on the ranch, I really wrote the whole place off as just a bunch of city boys being scared in the dark. Really, I did. It wasn't until the second week I was out there where I had an experience myself with another officer that kind of caught my attention and said, okay, there is something else going on out here. And then throughout the years, I had experiences, and it always happened when you least expected it. You weren't expecting for something to happen. You're doing a normal routine, and you would see something. And I did see 2 times orbs, I guess you want to call them that. And I thought they were actually trespassers on the property with flashlights. But when I got to the area, there was nobody there. So it was very strange. And I understand people's critiques and stuff about the property. But also, you got to spend a lot of time out there. You can't just spend one day out there or even a week out there and think you know what's going on. You have to spend years and years and years out there to separate the BS from what's real. And that's what I did basically. And so it's a mixture. It's a mixed bag. There is some real stuff that happens out there, but there is some things that aren't, necessarily real, that have been made up, or I shouldn't say made up, but embellished for whatever reason.
Right. And you know what? I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's a balanced assessment on things, because in a strange way, I have no idea what happens out there, but I know that former friends of mine had a little 10-acre hobby farm.
Mm-hmm.
And the high strangeness that was there, we called it the mini Skinwalker Ranch, but no, pardon me, we called it the mini ESETI Ranch, because every time we would go there, something would happen.
Yeah.
Whether it was ghosts or UFOs or Sasquatch in that area, and it's weird how the phenomenon just seems to stick to that piece of land. And you don't know why.
Yeah, that's weird. And at first, the first year I was out there, like I said, we did a lot of EVP sessions. We even did a remote viewing experiment out there. We did all kinds of stuff out there to try to do the basic Ghostbuster stuff. And it wasn't until 2011 when I was out there alone where I was kind of do more connect to the property more in a spiritual aspect, where I started to realize what was going on out there. And for me, the 6-year investigation that I conducted out there personally led to the conclusion that it's all based on the indigenous history out there, that there is that history, energy, frequency, and vibration is naturally displaced in the environment. And some of the negative blowback reported throughout the years is the result of trespassing on some of these hallowed grounds. It really is a location where there's a lot of history there. And some of the artifacts I found on the property validate that. And also the locals talk about very openly about the property and how it's considered cursed ground. So there is a mixture of that. And on top of that, I didn't know about the magnetic anomalies until I met James Keenan, and he found 3 or 4 different separate magnetic anomalies in that certain area. So it was interesting to find the magnetic anomalies also closer to locations out there where there was an abundance of artifacts. And some of the artifacts I discovered out there go back 8,000 years ago. So for 8,000 years, there was people in that area for either spiritual purposes or it was good hunting grounds or whatever. But there was people out there that enjoyed that area or lived there very, very for a long time. So that was my point. I actually had a topographical map of the property, and through the 6 years, every time I found an artifact or an area of interest or something that stood out as or a cave system, I would take a GPS location and take a picture and pinpoint it on the map. And I was discovering that there was, when people reported having weird strangeness or feeling something or a sensation, that there was an abundance of that history nearby to that counteracted with the artifacts and the people's experience. There was that, and it was actually ignored. My research was pretty much ignored the whole time I was out there, which I thought was ridiculous because it's absolutely provable. And I've been out there several times now and showed the new team that. And the new team that's out there now, they have way more access to equipment and stuff to gather data. So, I'm not saying that my narrative, what I'm talking about, is the ultimate answer for the ranch. I'm just saying it's just one more piece of the puzzle of what that property really is. There's many overlapping layers of high strangeness in the whole Uinta Basin, not just Skinwalker Ranch. It's that whole Uinta Basin that's got all kinds of weird stuff.
When did the high strangeness start for you there? Was it immediate, like we hear, or did it take its time to warm up to you?
I think the ranch has a way to see if somebody's spirit is genuine. And if you go out there looking for darkness, you're going to find darkness. I promise you that. But if you go out there and have a positive mindset and focus on the light, you're going to have a more positive experience. And I learned from both sides. I learned from dabbling in the darkness of being negative out there and having negative experiences. But then when I started focusing more on the cultural aspects of the property, the actual indigenous history, that's when everything changed for me on a whole different level. And like I said, the first week I was out there, nothing happened, and I was ready to write the place off. It wasn't until the second week where myself and another officer had this strange, I guess, big black wolf experience. And it was very odd, and the whole situation about the whole story was weird. And even to this day, I think about that incident every single night about what was going on. And that's when everything kind of changed for me. And then over the course of the years, talking to locals and other people who've had experiences, it's hard not to rule out of the history that's out there.
Right. Okay. So you saw many things when you were out there. I don't know what they are. I would love for you to share for our audience what
Sure.
you actually saw out there. What was the strangest thing you saw?
The strangest thing I would say would be the wolf experience that we encountered in 2010. At the time, there was 2 officers on the property, myself and another guy, and he had come back from a morning run and discovered these large canine footprints. And so we went out to look at them, And it was strange because the footprints appeared to walk on 2 feet, but then on 4 feet, and then on 2 feet. There was a 3-foot stride in the span of the print, and the prints were about, I don't know, 4 inches wide and 5 inches long. And so it was a big canine. And at the time, we had 2 big black labs and a border collie, and the prints dwarfed our Labrador's print. So it caught our attention that, and it wasn't just a normal coyote track. This looked like something bigger. And so that night, you know, we made notifications. Hey, we found these strange tracks. Could it be explained? Probably, but hey, we're going to try and investigate further. And our whole mindset was try to capture this wolf or whatever it was, you know, because this is back in 2010, you know. The ranch was not a mainstream topic. It was just us out there trying to figure it out. And so that night we set out to collect data or get photographic evidence of this animal. And so we went out all night long making makeshift campfires with the dogs. And we noticed the dogs were acting very strange all night long. They were right next to us, clinging, when normally they would be out trying to catch rabbits and stuff. So we knew something was up. And it was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. We started walking back towards the trailer, back to Homestead 1, because we lived out there, obviously. And it was about time we'd been out all night long, and we were pretty exhausted. And we started walking, we started backtracking our steps from that night. And we noticed those wolf prints behind our prints. So this thing had been following us the whole night long, and we never saw it. So at that moment, when that happened, we both were like, okay, it's serious now. So, you know, white flashlight, there's no need for a tactical situation here. We need to get back to Homestead 1 because we feel like we are being stalked, literally stalked. And so we were walking around the bend, which is now called the triangle. I mean, back then, I didn't know anything about a triangle, but we called it the bend. And it was in October, so the ditch that runs through the property was dry, a little bit dry, a little bit wet, but not like running water through it. So it was dry. And to the south is a giant field, and to the north is the mesa. So we're in a location where whatever's following us is going to be exposed here in the next 100 feet. And I'm maybe about 50 feet ahead of my partner, and I'll never forget this because it replays in my head every single night. It was a full moon night, and the clouds were going over the moon, and it felt like when that happened that the energy just sunk, like time stood still, and it felt like time was compressing at this moment. And he said, "Stop, I heard something." And as I'm turning around, which felt like an eternity, turn around to say what, out of the ditch, we hear this god-awful guttural howl growl. I mean, it's something I've never heard before. And we see this black wolf jump out of the ditch, land on the road, and travel west. The 3 dogs we were with ran after the wolf, or large canine, whatever it was. We ran after the dogs because we thought if the dogs tumble with this big animal, they're going to get killed for sure. And we're running behind this black wolf, and it basically just vanished in the shadows. Not like poof magic, but we lost track of it. And the dogs stopped on a dime, which was weird. And they looked at us, and we looked at the dogs, and then we backtracked and got out of that area, made the notifications, and then went out the next morning and took photographs of the prints. And I think I sent you some of the print photographs on an email, but it was very strange for sure. But the weird thing was, so that happened in 2010. And then in 2011, we went down to 1-person officer. And now I'm out there by myself. And in 2015, I'm out there at the East Gate by myself, sitting in a lawn chair with the dogs, 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, in 2015, the ranch was like a second home. I had no fear of the property. I felt very comfortable there, no problem. So I had my guard down. And behind me, I hear that same guttural howl growl like I heard in 2010. And I came off my chair, gun out, spinning, because I thought this thing was jumping on me. And the dogs went after it. And I hit the ground, got up, tried to get my bearings, and it was gone. So then I'm like, great, now I got to walk a quarter mile back to the ranch trailer to call it a night. And the whole night, I'm just like, I'm walking down the dirt road. It's all trees. I'm worried about getting flanked by this giant wolf or whatever. But it was like letting me know, like, hey, I'm still out here. And what's weird is that, people write it off as like it's just a wolf experience. And maybe it was, but there's only 20 reported wolves for the entire state of Utah. So I guess Skinwalker Ranch is very lucky to have one of those large wolves on its property or whatever. But if it's out there, and it's not just me who's seen it, other locals in the area have reported seeing that large wolf. It just totally caught my attention. So that kind of changed my perspective, and I looked at the ranch in a whole new way. And then that's when I started digging into the Native American aspect more and learning more about the culture. What we consider the phenomena, the Utes and the Shoshone and the Fremont just consider it part of their culture. They would go to these locations, observe, and spiritually evolve. And that's kind of how my mindset was in 2011. And that's how everything changed. But that incident caught my attention for sure, where I was dealing with something that I was not aware of. And I remember in the initial report, I told the officer to say that I didn't even see the animal because I still had an active Q clearance with the DOE. And I was afraid that those reports were going to the Pentagon, that somebody would read that report and take my clearance away. So I was like, I was very nervous about what I reported out there the whole time, pretty much, because I was afraid to lose my Q clearance.
I'd be afraid to lose the Q clearance too. I mean, that's your lifeline.
Yes. It's hard to get that.
The idea that you have this incident with this wolf, is there a history of wolves in that area? That's what's interesting. It wasn't until the next month I read the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, and the first chapter is about a big wolf. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I was stunned. I mean, I remember laying on the couch at Homestead 1 on Skinwalker Ranch, reading this Hunt for the Skinwalker book, and the first chapter is about the wolf. And I turned to my partner and I'm like, did you read this book? And he's like, I did. He goes, I didn't. I said, the first chapter is about a wolf. And he's like, what? And we were kind of like, and so the whole time we're out looking for this animal, and it never appeared again, except for that little sliver of time, And then again in 2015 when I was by myself. And there was another situation in the West Gate area where we heard like an Indian drum that beat for like 7 seconds, just enough time to pull my digital recorder out and try to get and it was gone. And I'm like, what is going on out here? So I don't know. I felt like the more I immersed myself in the environment, the more time I spent out there, the more layers were being pulled back in the environment. The more things were being shown, I guess, because I was finding all these artifacts, and they have significant value that proves the history out there. And it wasn't just the Utes. It was before the Shoshone. It was the Fremont Indians that were out there. We're talking 8,000 years ago. I remember taking that artifact down to the University of, the Vernal Museum in Vernal, and had them look at it, and it was a paleo find. And they asked me where I found it, and I said Fort Duchesne. I didn't tell them it's Skinwalker Ranch, and they just kind of looked at me like, "We found this in Fort Duchesne. Did you dig for it?" I said, "No, it was an above ground find. I didn't dig for anything." He goes, "That's impossible." I said, "Well, you're holding it," and so he was like, "That's an incredible find." So I don't know. That I felt like something was kind of guiding me to those to see that truth or to speak that truth, and that was my entire focus the whole time out there after that. And you mentioned Vernal, Utah. We'll give a shout out to our radio station, Channel 94X in Vernal, Utah, playing us in the evenings, getting all woo-filled with us with Chris Bartell, who used to work at Skinwalker Ranch. I got to ask you, in regards to the ranch, as we only got 45 seconds left, did you ever think that you would be in danger of this high strangeness?
No, never. I never thought the place had any dangers, seen or unseen. Like I said, later on we knew about some dangers from locals that wanted to hurt us, to harm us. That was it. But as far as the paranormal side of it, no, never did that occur to me that I would be in threat of that. Of course, animals, stuff like that for sure, but not like the paranormal side of it, no.
When we come back, we're going to find out what Chris Bartell is working on now. We know it has to do with mountains. We know it has to do with something in the Nevada desert. We're going to find out next on Spaced Out Radio as Chris Bartell is here, formerly of Area 51, Skinwalker Ranch, security guard extraordinaire, and budding photographer. Budding. Never get to use the word budding around here. So you got that one, Chris.
Thank you.
Spaced Out Radio with me, Dave Scott, continues right after this break. So stay tuned. More with Chris Bartell right after this. That was a fast half hour, man.
Yeah, it went by quick.
No kidding. No kidding. All right. We are going to mix in some questions from our audience in the next half hour.
Yeah.
So if you're in our audience, make sure you put your questions in capital letters so that way I can get to them. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Wes H., how you doing? And Dirty Filth, we're going to turn this monster over to you, Chris. We got about 5 minutes, okay? So I'm going to just go like this. Dirty Filth, all yours. Don't forget to unmute your mic. And make sure the potty mouth stays in the potty.
I love your work, by the way. Amazing.
Oh, 1 second here. Sorry about that. I had to turn down the horrible music here. I put some music on in the background to quiet her a little bit. But, yes, thanks. I finally get to say now, I always think that your pictures that you share
Oh, thank you.
are top notch.
Appreciate
So
it.
I think about it, I just kind of go into the little world, and I always wonder what you were looking at and experiencing at that time. So
I kind of felt like using my photography helped, definitely helped pass the time, but also kind of felt like a shield, like it protected me from whatever was out there. But also, I was always looking back at it, trying to see if I missed something in the pictures or whatever. That's kind of why I donated all my archive to the University of Maryland, so more eyes can see those pictures to see if maybe I missed something, and also to archive that for historical purposes. But yeah, the photography kind of helped me get through, and I noticed that my time out there really enhanced my photography, my creative vision for sure.
that's awesome. I appreciate the historical and adding something to history, because I've just always found historians and just,
Yeah.
history that's just, this is what happened. Take it for what
Yeah.
you want.
I mean,
especially with photos.
Yeah. I think it's important. Like at the time when I was taking these images, I never thought that the ranch would be a mainstream topic ever. It was just a story to tell my kids one day about this really kind of neat place I worked at. It was just another, I guess, feather in the cap, because when I left in 2018, Bigelow Aerospace, I didn't really think about the ranch at all. I was off to a different job. So it wasn't until the show came out and everything, I'm like, what? People are really into this stuff. And I had this archive of photographs that people might be interested to see how it was like during my timeline, because it was a very unique timeline to be out there.
I could imagine that.
Yeah.
Well, just at least from like a weirdo artist stance. But
I actually taught myself graphic design while I was out there. In the winter months when we were snowed in, I couldn't go out and take pictures and couldn't do anything. And I got bored. So I watched 50 hours of graphic design video. And I started doing graphic design work for companies and stuff for a long time. As like a little side project.
oh, I don't know if I'm just gonna ask you. Dave can ask you probably later. Just if he does, pretend you forgot. Do you ever see any portals? Actual portals?
Never
while you
did.
were out there?
I never did. No, never saw any
Damn.
portals. And trust me, I was trying to find them. I was literally sleeping outside on the rocks with the dogs at night, hoping that, because I felt like anytime I was inside Homestead 1, I was missing out on something. I felt
Parties
like,
happening outside.
yeah, I felt like there was something going on. I need to be outside, and I felt like I'm just wasting my time if I'm inside the house. So I spent as much time as possible outside in the elements. And yeah, I never saw anything. Now I don't put it past it actually happening, because historically there's petroglyphs around that location, McConkey Ranch and McKee Springs, that depict portals. So, it's the indigenous cultures had a deeper connection to everything than we do today. We scoff at the paranormal or the phenomena and say it's not real, and maybe it's not real to them, but to the indigenous cultures before us, it was very real. Very real. They didn't have a government to give them a disclosure. They just observed nature and realized they were a part of nature, and then they spiritually evolved from that knowledge. And that's kind of how my mindset was towards the end of my time on the ranch. I just used it as a place to, I guess you want to call it, spiritual evolution.
Well, you
Right
can't
on.
deny thousands of years of indigenous people who aren't connected to have similar stories.
Right.
Maybe you could, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, they
But as your cartoonist.
they observed the environment, they learned, they evolved, they took it as part of their culture, and they had it right because they were deeply connected to everything. I mean, look how we live now. We're so anti-nature in our everyday lives that we don't have that knowledge anymore.
All right, guys, we got about 20 seconds left. Hi, Susie B, and hi, Whoopoo. Thanks for coming on in. And big thank you tonight so far to Kim, Jenny, T-Bone, and Major Lee for the super chats. Don't forget to hit that follow button, hit subscribe, ring that bell. We're here 7 days a week. Here comes hour number 2, everyone.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. You can join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. And what do you got for us tonight, Clam? Well, let's take a look. Jactation. Jactation is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We continue on tonight with Chris Bartell. He formerly worked at Area 51, formerly at Skinwalker Ranch. He's got a new project going on now out in the Nevada desert, working with Carl the Crusher, who has an amazing YouTube channel with over 3 million subscribers. And Chris, working with Carl, that's got to be just a fun treat.
It's amazing how we linked up and how we've gone on several adventures together in the Uinta Basin and out in Nevada as well. It's been a great time. I talk to him daily. He's a great guy.
What is the purpose of this new research for you?
I think the purpose of it is to elevate consciousness is the number one. When I show people my photography, I want them to look at a different world. When I do I do flip photography that I felt like my time on Skinwalker Ranch or the Uinta Basin enhanced my creative vision without a doubt. And in 2021, I started doing flip vision stuff where I would take images and flip them, and it would show like a different, I guess, dimension or insights to a different parallel universe, or whatever you want to call it. And this was actually confirmed later on by a Navajo elder named Roger Colte, and he met with Carl and talked to me about it, and something that indigenous cultures did a long time ago with using crystals and sweats and meditations and stuff. And through my photography, I'm able to kind of show people how I see the world now. And the whole purpose is to elevate our consciousness and spiritually evolve. So when you go to these locations like Skinwalker Ranch or the Uinta Basin and Mount Wilson, Nevada, there is that number one foundation is the indigenous history tied to all these locations. So you go out there and you tap into that frequency and it changes you for sure.
The idea that you are searching from the Uinta Basin right through to the Nevada mountains around Las Vegas, there is so much strangeness going on, separated by the largest military base in North America. I mean, how do you even find these areas where there's strangeness? Do you get tipped off? Do you just hear rumors and check out those rumors of where things are? How does that go?
A lot of it is people reach out to people like Carl and myself and say, hey, I own this piece of property. We've reported some weird things. Can you come help us get an answer? Maybe even help us debunk it. And in some situations, they are debunkable. But in some situations, it's like, yeah, there is something weird out here. And it kind of always goes back to looking into the rocks and the natural environment and finding those. Maybe there's a petroglyph area nearby, or maybe they're near an Indian reservation or whatever it is, but there's always that connection there. But usually it's people reaching out to us to come check out the properties. And then for me to come out and photograph it, I was asked by Dwayne Ollinger from Blind Frog Ranch in 2021 to come out and photograph his property. And I spent the summer out there with James Keenan photographing. I probably 6,000 images of that property and stuff. And with Mount Wilson, Carl was approached by somebody who owned the property, and then he told me about it. And then I was like, I remember Bigelow owning that property, but I didn't know much about it. And it turns out that Bigelow owned that property before Skinwalker Ranch. So, you know, the whole Nevada is 86% owned by the government. So to find these little slivers of unique places is, I guess, it's a rarity. You know, it's a rare thing.
What kind of experiments are you guys doing at these locations? Let's say in the Nevada mountains, and why did you choose there?
We do like infrasound experiments, light experiments, frequency experiments. We're doing stuff with consciousness, and Carl knows way more about that stuff. He linked up with Museum of Tarot, Brent Stone, who has a bunch of tools and devices that we've used out there. The purpose of being out there and showing other people that spending more time in nature and then practicing meditations at some of these locations is good for the spirit, mind, and soul, basically. And Carl is really into that as well. And he's taught me things and I've taught him things. So we've kind of been on a spiritual path together. And it's going to these unique locations where there is that indigenous history and history of, I guess you want to call, high strangeness. There's also the scientific aspect where there is some type of residual energy there for whatever purposes, whether it be in the natural environment through magnetic anomalies or a crashed meteorite or whatever else. But I think people kind of focus more on the scientific aspect. You know, we seem like in society we always want a scientific explanation, because if we have a scientific explanation, that gives us control. It gives us power over what we don't really know. You know, so I think in indigenous cultures, they didn't have scientific devices to explain the phenomena. They just observed it and absorbed it and then evolved with it, you know, and brought it part of their culture. So that's kind of like what we want to show people to do, is ground yourself more in nature, I guess, is the key.
Is it more of a spiritual journey, or are you trying to communicate with the phenomena that exists in these mountains?
For me, it's just a spiritual journey. I mean, I don't feel like I don't need to communicate. I kind of feel like I already have my answers, you know, after years of a spiritual path, like many people. I kind of feel like I already have my answers. And for me, it's kind of showing my kids that same path now. And I want to take them to these locations and let them explore and tap into that energy as well. And I think everybody should go visit these ancient petroglyph sites and spend more time diving into there as well.
Do you think they hold messages from the past that really could advance us in the future?
Maybe so. I think so. I think if people realize the more positive energy you produce on a daily basis is what brings your celestial spirit forward into the future, society as a whole would be a lot different. You know, if everybody realized to focus more on the positive aspects of life and not dwell in the darkness, society as a whole would be further into the future. But that's not how it really is. So you hang around people like Carl and myself that talk about this freely, and it helps people to kind of open their mind up to the possibilities of focusing on the. And it's so easy to focus on the negativity, especially now in today's society with devices and social media and media in general, and the way the world operates. But if you get time to go out in nature and spend a couple weeks, you know, retuning your own biological frequency of the earth, I would highly recommend it.
Have you had any strange encounters since you've been there?
At Mount Wilson Ranch, I have not. I had no strange encounters at all that I can, off the top of my head. But I've only spent like a week out there with Carl. Carl has spent a lot of time out there. He's had some strange encounters. I actually take that back. While we were all together in November of 2022 at Mount Wilson, we were in the bar area, the old lounge area, and I saw it too. I saw somebody walk by the door, and Carl went over there thinking that there was somebody like walking around. There was nobody there, but it happened out of the corner of our eye. Like, what was that? And then he went over there, and we both didn't say anything at first. And I go, "Did you see that?" He goes, "Did you see it?" I said, "Yeah, what was that?" He's like, "I don't know." So, and that bar has got so much history there. That Mount Wilson place has got a lot of history, and it's kind of cool because anybody can go up there and check it out and stay up there. It's awesome.
Any UFO sightings?
There is a lot of UFO sightings only because Area 51 is right down the street. So there is a lot of sightings for sure. As far as your typical, what we want to believe as an alien UFO, I never personally saw any out there, but other people in the local area have reported it. There's people in the local area at Mount Wilson have reported abductions even. So there is some type of weird strangeness out there. Now that's their story to tell. Me personally, I never saw anything like that or encountered anything like that out there.
Now, I have heard some high strangeness out of Mount Wilson. It sends compasses crazy. It's magnetic. There seems to be all sorts of energy patterns that are there. Tell us what is special about Mount Wilson in Nevada.
I think what's special about it is there is some type of magnetic anomaly or infrasound frequency humming deep within the earth at that location on top of the Native American historical foundation that's there. When back during the Reagan administration, that location was going to be used as a site for the Star Wars missions, basically for their missile defense system. And what happened was when they went out there and broke ground, they discovered a massive archaeological site out there on the mountain, a Native American site, where they were pulling truckloads and truckloads of artifacts off that mountain. And that pretty much shut down the whole operation, was because of the historical indigenous history out there. And that's when the property was sold to private ownership. And eventually Mr. Bigelow bought it in 1995, I believe. And then in 2004, I believe, is when the new owner, Jeff McBurney, bought it from Bigelow. And so, but yes, there is the native history that's out there, but there is some type of, when we did the infrasound tests out there with Brent Stone, his device was showing these crazy spikes that were coming from somewhere within the earth.
Do you think that's alien, or do you think that's a natural earthly phenomena?
I don't know. I think it's probably either an earthly natural phenomena, or it's man-made, that there's something there that's man-made because of the individuals involved at the time at Mount Wilson Ranch. You have Hal Puthoff, Robert Bigelow, Jacques Vallée, but also there was a guy named Timothy Ryan out there who was involved in Mount Wilson Ranch, and his background was in DARPA and phased array developments and weapon systems. And so there was something going on out there. Now, whether maybe they're out there trying to find actual crashed alien UFOs, that's yet to be determined. But there was something else going on up there as well, and that's also a timeline where Bigelow also bought Skinwalker while he owned both ranches at the same time. So you have an alpha site and a Bravo site, basically, a controlled site and an uncontrolled site. So if you were to test something, let's say it's man-made, you would have an alpha site and a Bravo site. So it would make sense. But there is still more to the story, and we're slowly coming back those layers, and we're being very transparent about it. Carl's very transparent about it. Every show he's on, he talks about it very openly. He's way more engaged in it than I am, because he lives right there in the area. He lives in St. George area. So, and I live out here in Kansas. So for me to get out there, I got to take a flight or drive out there. So this year I'm going back out there again with Carl and spend more time out there. And of course, my camera will be with me, and I'll be sharing those images online.
That is fantastic. Brown Dwarf in our chat room was thinking what I was going to say, because in my research with Mount Wilson, there's the rumor that the mountain has covered up a UFO.
Right.
Have you ever heard this rumor?
I have heard that. There is supposedly a crashed alien craft in that area. But if it is there, hopefully we can find it and dig it out and show the world. That's kind of the goal. And I hope, and you would think, though, if Bigelow owned it, that they would do just that. They would dig it out and use that technology to help his aerospace industry. So I'm assuming they probably knew about it before we did, but there is something about that. But yes, I've heard those rumors as well. That's kind of what we're hoping to figure out, if it's either a real crashed alien out there, the saucer, or it's something else. So I guess stay tuned. I don't know.
I could just imagine it. You imagine all of a sudden having a UFO there that's still active, that's still giving off energy.
That would be pretty amazing.
What are the chances?
I mean, maybe it's true. Maybe it's something. I know me and Carl have gone back and forth about this, and I don't. There is some truth to it. Who knows? We're trying to hope to find out, and for once and for all, see what the truth really is. We've talked to people and we've heard different stories about this and that, and some of the stories don't really line up, and some do. So we're just like, forget it. We're going to do it ourselves and see what happens. But if it was something like, if there was like a crashed alien spaceship there, you would think, since Nevada is 86% owned by the government already, that they would already secured that site and remove that object themselves and transport it to 51 or wherever else they would. That's where I'm kind of like, well, if there is a crash UFO here, it wouldn't be sold to a private citizen. I don't think it would. I think the government would probably come in and probably seize it, but because I'm sure they would know about the rumors as well. But then again, the government's busy, so maybe it is out there. We'll find out. I'm hoping to find out this year. We intend to find out this year.
From your knowledge, then, is there a lot of different crash sites around that Area 51 area, or even in the Uinta Basin?
I've been on several crash and recovery missions around Area 51 during my time at Nellis Air Force Base. All of them involve, your normal, typical air power global dominance type aircraft, F-15s, Hawks, even Predator drones. I've been on Predator drone crash sites, believe it or not. But yeah, I've been on several around that location, around Creech, around Groom Lake. In 1999, I was on two F-15s crash right outside of Groom Lake, and we lived out in the desert for like a week, securing that site until an investigation was done. So maybe it's interesting. I mean, every time there's a red flag and at Nellis Air Force Base, planes tend to crash because that's what planes do sometimes. But it seems like there's a lot around that Nevada desert.
Now, in the Nevada desert, obviously, we don't know what they are testing out there regarding different types of aircraft, different types of propulsion systems, G-force systems, or anything like that. How do we tell from there, just in your experience, what is ours and what could be theirs?
That's the whole that's the whole game right there. people don't really understand. I keep saying air power and space power, global dominance is the objective, and everything else is a distraction. So that, and then how that's obtained and how that's achieved is by keeping everyone in the dark, to include citizens, our allies, our enemies, obviously, members of Congress, even our own military pilots. It's a very small unit or a small group of need to know type individuals when it comes to those special access programs. So I'm assuming a lot of the stuff does get mistaken for alien technology. And if you think about it, just this year alone, what's been pushed to the forefront, you have the B-21 Raider that's coming out. You have Project Skyborg that's coming out. And if people don't know what Project Skyborg is, I highly recommend you take a look at it, because if they're coming out public with it, it's been tested for a very long time. On top of that, you have the new Lockheed Martin, the new Lockheed commercial that came out like 4 weeks ago about their new nanotube technology, where aircraft can morph and change shape. And it's unbelievable. And they're coming forward with all this technology. Now, is it ours? Is it aliens? I believe mostly it's our stuff. I really do. And I've worked at some of these locations, and I've never seen anything that struck me as like, whoa, that is Star Trek alien type technology. I've seen some very impressive technology, and I'll leave it at that. But I've never once been like, I need to go shake the pillars of heaven about what I saw that was alien. I mean, and it's so weird to think that if there was alien stuff, like they would leave it to humans to tell their story. I mean, it seems kind of silly to me that they would leave a lower life form like ourselves to tell their story. Why don't they just come out and be open with it? But I stay open about it. I'm on the fence with it. I'm not a big debunker or whatever, but I'm very open to the possibility. But because of my professional background, I have a kind of a jaded topic when it comes to, or jaded viewpoint when it comes to the topic.
Yeah, and as an experiencer, I come from it from a completely different angle
Right.
on just everything. But the idea though, and I've heard from other people that there isn't much for alien technology at Area 51. Sorry to break everyone's hearts,
Right.
but it's for testing. Even
Yeah.
S4, the famed S4, is there for testing. Do
Yeah.
you think, just even hypothetically, that there may have been alien technology there a long time ago, but once the idea started floating around that Area 51 was becoming more public, that it was probably time to move that if they had it?
I think if you would have asked me that question maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would say yes. But actually working in this environment and seeing what goes into these special access programs and what goes into moving specialized aircraft in the whole, it's not as easy as what people think. I would say I don't think so. I think a lot of it is just human technology that we reverse engineered from after World War II. I don't know. It's tough because I want to believe. I want to be very open about the possibility. But if you notice the conversation now, it went from little green men to now everything's NHI. Everything's NHI. Well, that's also because our current narrative that's going right now is our current AI is evolving right now as we speak. So it kind of matches, and it's easier for people to merge the lines together. And it's going to come out where it's like, is it alien technology or is it our technology? Well, it's so advanced that it must be alien technology. It's all about global positioning and strategic command and global dominance with our adversaries and allies. And there's a bigger picture when it comes to it, and I think a lot of it is, the CIA is involved in every aspect of this conversation on both sides of the house, and I'm an experiencer too. I fully believe in the consciousness theory that we're just big antennas and there's some type of cosmic force out there that taps into us once in a while and gets these inspirations or visions or whatever you want to call it. But when it comes to the brass tacks and the military involvement, I believe a lot of it is our technology.
Fully agree with you on that. Fully agree with you on that. And I appreciate your candid answer on that. Chris, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we have you right till the top of the hour here on Spaced Out Radio. And, we're going to take some audience questions. So if you're in our YouTube chat room and you want to ask a question, put it in capital letters so it's easier for my 50-year-old eyes to read. We'd appreciate that. And we're going to get more into high strangeness because it's fun. And that's why we're here to talk about the strangeness that surrounds us on Spaced Out Radio. Chris Bartell, once again, our guest tonight, former employee of Area 51, Skinwalker Ranch, now chasing high strangeness in the Nevada and Utah deserts on Spaced Out Radio. This is good times, my man.
Oh,
Very
good.
good times.
Yeah, last year I did a lot of interviews, and I kind of felt like I kept saying the same things over. So I like some of the questions you asked me because they're things I don't really talk about, which is like some of my experiences on the ranch. Obviously I don't talk about a lot of the stuff. I mean, I do, but I don't know if I'll be ever to explain how it was being out there alone, like truly alone, and not really. It was a very dark time at times, and how I got through it was through, it was through my photography and stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's to see the topic now where it's evolved, it blows my mind. It really does.
Do you like it?
I do, because it brings more. I want people to elevate their consciousness, and if this discussion helps them see the world a little bit different in a positive way, and create that positive atmosphere. If it creates a positive atmosphere in your life, great. But if it creates a negative atmosphere in your life, you might want to second guess, jumping in, both feet. And I've seen that with people where they spend all day long fighting back and forth on social media platforms, and it's all a waste of energy, because honestly, the only thing that we really have is time well spent. So spend it wisely on something you love to do, which I love having these conversations.
Absolutely. You've had so many people over the years kind of come up to you and just ask you what it's all about, trying to inch towards getting to know people like Robert Bigelow or Kelleher or many others. John Alexander, another one. The only guy who scared me on air, John Alexander.
I believe it.
Yeah, he yelled at me. First time I interviewed him, he yelled at me twice on the show.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh my God, they made a movie about this guy. He's going to kill me, man. He's going to look at me and kill me,
I never had the pleasure to meet him, but maybe one day.
Yeah. He's a cranky curmudgeon, but he's very accepting of a phone call. I will say that.
He is open about it, I guess, but he's also, he's on the fence with a lot of stuff as well. And with his background, it's, there's a story there for sure. I think eventually maybe it'll come out, but
if you look at his resume and look it up, it's not my story to tell, but he was allegedly a real badass during the years of Vietnam, man.
That's what I've seen.
Yeah, he was a real badass. Like when crap was hitting the fan, they were asking him and his team to go in there and clean it up.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, it never hurts to have a movie part played after you.
Right.
The who stare at goats.
Right.
He still scares me though. Still scares me. Yeah. Oh, half the show done.
Well, it's going by so fast.
I know. Hard to believe.
It's crazy.
Dude, I could sit down for a beer with you and just chat for hours, man.
Oh, I would love that.
Hi, Penny Van. How you doing? Yeah, man. It's we're always in search for that area that has high strangeness going on.
Yeah.
And I have been tipped off that there could be a Canadian version of Skinwalker Ranch somewhere around where I live.
Do you live anywhere by the Blackfoot Reservation?
No.
No. Where do you live at exactly? You live by Toronto?
No, I'm on the west. I'm on the West Coast. I'm in
Okay.
British. I'm about driving wise. I'm about 5.5 hours northeast of Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is probably a spot out there. There's a spot everywhere. You just got to go out there and tune in your frequency into it. That's really it. You can go out there and telling you. Well, I do this thing now where I go to these locations like Mount Wilson, and I'll take some stones from that area, some rocks. I'll come back home and I'll meditate holding those rocks. And then I go back to my photography archive that I took while I was there, and I start flipping images, and it's wild. It's like a whole spiritual. I sent you some of the flip images when you get time to take a look at them. Very powerful images.
Are they as powerful as Carl's beard?
No.
That's what we need to know.
That thing is plus 50 strength and wisdom.
All right. Hold on right there. I want to say thank you to Major Lee, T-Bone, Jenny, Kim, Aloha Dave, Dutch Hank, and CS for the super chats tonight. Here we go with your questions in the next half hour, everybody. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button, our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We continue on for the next half hour with Chris Bartell, formerly worker at Area 51, security at Skinwalker Ranch, now trying to find his own Zen and Chi in the mountains of Utah and Nevada. Chris, welcome back, my friend.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
I have some audience questions here for you. They're going to be random. They're going to be all over the place. But the best part is they're from our audience, so that means the most. And we're going to start off with Susan here, who is asking, is there an official Area 51 indoctrination?
I wouldn't say, well, I mean, yes, you go through an not indoctrination. You go through like the history of the property and what the facility was created for, and you take an espionage course, stuff like that, and the do's and don'ts, which you can do and can't do and cannot do. So there is some type of indoc. It's called desert indoc, basically, to that organization. Last time I was there, we went through like a 2-week course, basically.
That's cool. Are those the painted lines all over the place where you got to follow the yellow line to this, the blue line to that, the green line and the red line or whatever color line, just so like if you're made for the blue line, you don't skip on to anybody else's line?
It's very compartmentalized for a purpose. Keep everybody in their own lane.
Apparently. Don't mess up your colors. It'd be hell for a colored blind person, that's for sure.
When I took the espionage course, it was quite an eye-opener, because I learned that in Las Vegas alone, there's over 15 different spy agencies on the ground collecting data on American citizens every single day, hoping to meet an engineer from 51 or anybody from the Nevada test site, and they get them drunk at the local bar, and they start spilling secrets. And that's how, because it's not uncommon to walk around with $30,000 cash because you're gambling, you pay people off. So there's a huge espionage that's overlooked when it comes to this topic. And at every angle, there's manipulation and deception, and that's where the CIA gets involved. You know, it was a big eye opener for me.
I heard a story about a former employee there who landed on the Janet Jets, came off the Janet Jets, was driving home, and was being tailed. And then I guess there's a secret number that you have to call in your vehicle when you suspect you're being tailed. And anyways, apparently 2 French nationals ended up being arrested trying to get this guy.
I believe it. I believe it.
And it happens a lot more than we think.
It happens a lot more than, and not just for 51, but for the DOE side of the house as well, and the Air Force side of the house. You know, Las Vegas is a very unique location. There's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, I never knew that until my buddy who lives in Las Vegas, around here we used to call him Random Guy. He was telling me about the same thing, and you're confirming that Las Vegas, outside of Washington, D.C., is the biggest spy hub in the world.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, that's where the big deals go down. You want to, yeah, and there's so many spies there. He figured that there were thousands of spies each day coming in and out of Vegas from all over.
You never know who you're talking to out there. It's very. I lived 20 years in Las Vegas, and I love that city. I love being out there. I moved only because of my father passed away. We moved back to the Midwest and took care of the family out here. But I really love being out there. It's such a very diverse city. But you're right. You never know who you're talking to out there. And I used to work as a part-time bouncer in the industry out there in Las Vegas. And I got to meet some very interesting characters.
You know what's interesting, completely off topic. Right now in my little town of like 1,800 people, we have a big frozen lake out here. And there are Navy SEALs out here training to swim in ice water right now.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it.
But getting back to the whole Vegas thing, you know, I think it's, before we move on to another question, I think it's very intriguing about the whole, you mentioned the espionage aspect of it all. Don't you find that just as a thrilling mind game?
It is, but also it's infiltrated into the current UFO topic on social media where, you know, especially after 2017, you see that there's all these intelligence agencies involved with the UFO narrative, and it's by design to manipulate the conversation, but also to divide, distract, and conquer. That's kind of that's what you're seeing. You see on one side of the house that's the true believers, and you see one side of the house that's the skeptics, and they're constantly at war, and that's by design, because if you can keep everybody divided and distracted, you can also control them. And there's a lot of emotions at play here, you know, when it comes to this. And it's like, you know, for me and you, I'm 46 years old, but, you know, 70 years of, you know, pop alien UFO culture, you know, we grew up with it. So I like to say, you know, disclosure is already here. It's here. You know, but why do we need the government's approval now? It seems kind of weird to me, you know, but even if we get the confirmation, yay or nay, are we going to fully accept it because we've invested so much of our identity into one side of the narrative, you know? So it kind of boils down to pick your poison. Do you want to pick this side of the CIA or that side of the CIA? It seems kind of interesting when really I'm talking about getting in touch with nature and meditating and elevating your consciousness is way more important than worrying about our government trying to say, oh yeah, we got aliens. Okay, great. Next, is it going to pay my bills? I don't think so. But if I can go out in nature and spiritually evolve, that can benefit me and my family and the people around me. And that's really important.
All right, let's move on. Let's go to Kaysen here. What's your opinion on the phenomena above the triangle in Skinwalker Ranch?
I think of that location, and James Keenan confirmed it, that there is a magnetic anomaly deep within the earth at that location. And James Keenan had a very interesting theory that kind of makes sense with my experience, where you have a situation where time is overlapping or compressed, where you have the past, present, and future all lined up in one location. And sometimes in certain hours or years or whatever, those lines blend together. And that's maybe that's exactly where I saw that large wolf at the first time in 2010. And then people have reported seeing UFOs in that area specifically. So maybe there is something to it, but I didn't know anything. When I was working out there, I never knew about magnetic anomalies anywhere on the property or anything. But when I met James, he's the one that kind of linked it together. And the new team now has confirmed that as well. You know, the new team that's out there now, I got to give them credit. You know, Eric Bard's out there truly trying to jump into the fire to find out what's going on. And there, you know, I understand there's a TV show and stuff, but I've been out there with the TV show and without the TV show. And it's fair to be out there without the TV show. And even Eric Bard agrees that he's able to do things freely out there. But there is something strange in that location. And I believe it's the magnetic anomaly located in deeper than the earth there, which came possibly from a meteorite.
That would be intriguing if it did, for sure. Let's go to Abbott here. Do you have any health issues from working at Area 51 or Skinwalker Ranch?
I do, actually. I do have some health issues from the Nevada test site side of the house with my lungs being exposed to silicus exposure, working in the underground system, underground mines, which have affected me my whole since leaving there. And then obviously health issues related to Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know. I've been, during my time out there, I didn't know about the radiation on the property. I didn't have a dosimeter out there to gauge radiation. When I worked at the Nevada test site, I had a dosimeter, obviously, to gauge radiation. I've had an MRI when I was out there at Skinwalker Ranch, and I've had 2 follow-up MRIs on my own dime to make sure I'm okay. And so far, no negative anomalies, but I do have somewhat of a thyroid issue that's being monitored right now through my doctors, and that's really about it right now. So I monitor my health very, very closely because of all the areas I've worked at in my time in the military and my time at the DOE and Skinwalker. So I try to monitor very, very closely.
Let's go to Rich Buddy here. Were you paranoid or when you were working on the ranch, or did you carry any firearms for safety?
I carried my SIG 226 pistol that I had, same one that I had the DOE with me out there. I wasn't really paranoid. I was worried more about the animals out there. Like there is mountain lions out there in the area, and there's obviously packs of coyotes and stuff like that. So, and of course, during my timeline, later on, we got intel that there was locals that wanted to shoot one of us. And I'm going to say this, and people aren't going to believe me, but this is what we were told, and this is what we found out later, that people believed that we were some type of hybrid, that we were able to live on that property. And so they wanted to shoot us to see if we were immortal or a reptilian. I don't know. So you always had that in the back of your mind every time you had people you approach at the gate. Are they armed? Are they drunk? And so I always carried a pistol just for safety purposes, because there was also 2 old ranch managers on the property as well that were there for 20 years, and it was our job to protect them as well. So, yeah, I carried a pistol everywhere I went.
Yeah, I would go in armed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I would go in armed. Did
There's
you think
a reservation out there, so it's a different set of rules out there.
Did you ever have an issue with people sneaking onto the ranch trying to experience the phenomena?
A couple times. It seemed like every time there was like a radio show about the ranch on Coast to Coast, or in 2012 when that movie came out, there was a movie that came out and Joe Rogan Questions Everything. Little miniseries came out. I was out there when he was out there, which is funny. But that's when we noticed an uptick of people coming out there trying to trespass. There was a situation where I almost got rolled up one night. We had a Lidl unit that we put by the main gate, the east gate. And I had bought a mountain bike because I was by myself. And I didn't like driving the vehicle around because they would give away my location with the lights and stuff. So I bought a mountain bike to traverse the whole mesa and ranch undetected at night with NVGs on. And I was coming back from the west side of the property, and I saw all these people by the Lidl unit trying to break it. So I come out of the darkness, and you see me, I'm all in black and stuff, NVGs, and they're all intoxicated. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and they were mad because the light was blinding them as they were driving up to the gate. So I had to, calm them down and call local BIA police, the tribe, to come out, and they got hit for a DUI because they were driving intoxicated. So occasionally you dealt with some bad characters, but for the most part, it was just, guys trying to scare their girlfriends out there, but sometimes you ran into some unsavory characters.
All right, let's move on to the next question from Maureen. George Knapp has said the phenomena has changed over the years. Do you agree, and can you comment on this?
I think maybe he means that there was times where the phenomena had gone away or dispersed. Has it changed? I don't believe it's changed. I don't believe it's other. See, that's the thing. In 2012, we were just out there alone, and we got no feedback on our daily reports. So most of the guys, including myself, stopped reporting a lot of incidents out there or experiences because nobody seemed to really care. We got really no feedback. So there were still things going on out there up until the property was sold. Not all the time, very rare, but there were some weird things that would happen. Like I said before, some of those experiences where people didn't debunk or maybe embellish the situation, that was something that was going on as well. But for the most part, there were some things that were very bizarre. Like I talked about earlier, where I hear in the drum circle for like 7 seconds and trying to record it, things like that. But as far as the phenomena changing, I don't believe so. I think it's the energy you put out is what you get back. So if you go out there and you project that energy, you're going to maybe have an experience.
All right, let's move on to T-Bone here in Vancouver. Any experience with the hitchhiker effect?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't even know what that even was until almost 9 years later. I've talked about it in Christina Gomez's podcast as well. I've only talked about it a couple of times, but yes, I had I shouldn't say I had the experience. My wife had the experience, and it's a little personal, but I'll touch on it a little bit. But I was going to the ranch back to back to back, and we had a brand new son who was born, and my wife had made the comment that she's seeing shadow figures in the apartment, and I thought maybe it was, I'm trying to use logic and common sense. Maybe it was postpartum depression or something. But she flat out said, "Do you think things follow you back from the ranch?" And I said, "No," but I felt like something did follow me back. I said, maybe, I don't know. And then sure enough, it was the following day I had her go take a nap or leave the apartment. I can't remember exactly, but I remember seeing a billowing ball of smoke in the dining room, the size of a grapefruit. And my son, who was dead asleep, woke up in like a night shriek terror. And that incident happened. I did a report on that incident. And then I called my mother, who's spiritually in tune with this stuff. And she suggested that next time I go to the ranch to grab the sage that's out there and smudge my house because something latched on. And so that's what I did. I went back to the ranch, like 2 weeks later, got sage, smudged our apartment, never had an issue ever since. Because I kind of believe the hitchhiker effect is you go to some of these locations and you're not spiritually attuned, or you're not showing the proper respect on these hallowed grounds, and that energy latches onto you, follows you home, presents itself as a warning, basically saying, "Hey, you trespass on my land, now I'm trespassing on yours. Tread lightly." And so, oddly enough, when that incident happened is when I was also finding the artifacts in the property as well. So there was something connection there, I believe, with the phenomena and the indigenous history in some of these locations. But yeah, I did have a hitchhiker effect. Several of us did. Almost everybody did. But we didn't know what it was. Yeah, it was weird.
What kind of effects did you have from that?
Me personally, psychologically, it was a lot to deal with. Like, I really thought to myself, is this really worth working here? What am I really subjecting myself to and my family to? Because at the time, I say you dwell in the darkness, you look for darkness, the darkness looks back. That timeline, I was out there alone, you're out there alone, you're out there with your thoughts for 2 weeks, and it was a lot to go through. And so it wasn't until I started changing my perception around the positive aspect that things changed. But it definitely changed me forever. It made me realize the reality we live in is a little bit different. There's something else to it.
Right. All right. Let's move on to another question from our audience here. Let's go to Brown Dwarf. Do you think there's a UFO under Mount Wilson? We talked a little bit about this during the show, but I want to get into this deeper a little bit.
I personally believe that what's under Mount Wilson is man-made. And I think over time that's either going to be proved or disapproved or disproved. Do I hope it's an alien ship? Absolutely. But do I personally think it is? I believe it's man-made, something there for whatever reason, we're going to find out.
Tony in the UK would like to know, is it possible the wolf that was stalking you, Chris, was it a dog man, as they seem to be everywhere?
I don't know. You know, I didn't even know what a dog man was until, like I said, years later, doing my own research on that situation. I know the local tribe that I talked to, the youth, the ones that would talk, took it very serious. And I've talked to people in the Uinta Basin who have seen dog man or have described that phenomenon themselves. I've never personally saw what was, I guess, the Class A description of a dog man. Is it a possibility? I don't know. I think maybe. I don't know. It was such a weird thing. But then again, it could have been just a normal wolf. You know, but the situation was so weird how it had to jump on us the whole night and the tracks it left. And then again in 2015, how it again was right behind me and then just growled at me. It was the whole thing is bizarre. I don't know. That's where it gets my head shaking a little bit because I always try to ground myself on the professional side of my background. And then I have these experiences where I'm like trying to make common sense with it. And it's hard to write off sometimes.
Oh, very true. Very true. Let's move on as we got about 3.5 minutes. Jojo is asking, Chris, have you had any health issues since or while working at Skinwalker Ranch? We kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. So let's move on to yes, no, maybe. New to our chat room. Welcome. What interactions with Dr. Kit Green have you had?
So in 2011, I had an MRI done in Reno, Nevada. And I met Kit Green. He's actually the one that picked me up and the other officer in Reno and drove us back to the airport. So that was the only interaction I ever had with him specifically. And I didn't even know who he was until a couple of years ago where I found out who he was. And then I was like, wait a minute, my MRI, what was it used for? And that led me down a whole different warpath. And I've been to Washington, D.C. now 3 separate times to try to get some closure on that. And so, yeah, it wasn't a negative experience. That was just the experience that I had with him.
Very, very cool. Okay, let's move on here with Super Ron. Any ideas about the Great Lakes area? Have you heard strange things going on there?
I haven't. I'm not familiar. I have friends. I have family that lives up in Saginaw, Michigan, but I don't know any stories about it.
Sea monsters, UFOs, all sorts. Okay. Super Ron asking, Dogman and Area 51 and Skinwalker Ranch, possible?
Interesting you bring that up. I learned about skinwalkers before going to Skinwalker Ranch from my time at the Nevada test site by an older gentleman who said they saw something like that on a thermal camera system out there. And the word he said was basically dogman or werewolf, he said. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah. Then once again, the Nevada test site has a 10,000 years of Paiute history, Native American history out there. A lot of petroglyphs out there and stuff. So, yeah, there is something out there. Or I've heard stories about that. Did I personally see it? No.
All right, let's continue on here because we got about 1 minute and 20 seconds left. And I want to say a big thank you to having you on the show tonight, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, just 2.5 weeks ago, we were just chatting on Twitter, and all of a sudden it turns into a real awesome conversation on this show. And I thank you very much for that.
Oh, I appreciate it. I really appreciate the time and allowing me to come on and talk about some of my experiences.
Yeah, man, we got to do it again.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah, this is way too fun. And I think our audience would really like it as well. Chris, tell everybody where they can find your work, Carl's work, and what you're working on now.
I'm on mostly X or Twitter, Chris Bartell, SWR at X. And then I have a YouTube channel, which is Christopher Bartel. I just post some of my photography pictures on there. That's pretty much it. I have a Facebook page, but that's pretty much private, but that's about it. Carl, you can follow him on his YouTube channel, Carl the Crusher, and on his on Instagram and Twitter. And also he has a Patreon that you can, and it's really good Patreon too because he does a lot of insider stuff. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And I'm pretty much open. People can email me at chrisbartell300 at gmail, and I respond back to everybody's questions and stuff.
Right on. Thanks for being one of the good guys out there, Chris. Very much appreciate you. Chris Bartell, everybody. Coming up next, Steve Stockton from Among the Missing. Then Courtney Marcassani will be here for the UFO report. Stand by. We got more show. One more hour to go here on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Chris, great job, man.
Wow, great. It's fun.
Glad you had fun. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for the time, man. I really appreciate it. I love your show. I really do.
Thank you.
It's cool.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll do this again soon.
Sounds good, man.
Take care, bud.
All right, bud.
Good night. Chris Bartell, everybody. I'm going to quickly step away and don't go anywhere. But we got a lot of good show coming back up here momentarily. So just stay tuned, everybody. All right. We're almost ready. My fault, Courtney. My fault. There you go. I forgot to send Courtney the link. My goodness, what a gracious host I am. We got a power UFO report coming up here. Power UFO report. Hi, Lunar Tina. Philip Baca, how are you? Sovereign Farts, nice to see you. All right. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on X or wherever you're watching, give us a follow or hit subscribe, ring that bell. If you like what you see tonight, you're on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. It really helps with the algorithms and helps us grow. I know it sounds selfish asking for that, but we have to. We do. We have to. There's our Courtney. It was my fault, Courtney. Totally my fault. Oh. All right. Big thank you tonight to CS, Dutch Hank, Major Lee, T-Bone, Jenny, Kim, and Aloha Dave for the super chats. Very much appreciate you coming on in and chatting with us and using that super chat. Thank you very much. Don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store just for Pixie Lara. We've got new Science Blob handbags and totes. Yes, they're there, ready for you to dive on in. Here we go, everybody, with the next half hour.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We always appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Jactation. Jactation is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We continue on tonight with Steve Stockton from Among the Missing and another spooky story.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Among the Missing YouTube channel on Spaced Out Radio. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'm about to take you on an unbelievable journey of people just like you. Their stories and encounters will haunt us on Among the Missing. The Alaska Triangle is a vast expanse of rugged terrain located in the southern Alaskan wilderness. This area has been the site of numerous mysterious disappearances that remain unexplained. The region comprises rough, icy mountains and tundras, with a significant portion yet to be explored. The triangle's boundaries are typically considered the space between Anchorage, Juneau, and Barrow. The strange vanishings in this area have perplexed investigators and given rise to various theories about what could happen in the Alaska Triangle. The Alaska Triangle has a lengthy history dating back to the early days of Alaska's settlement. The local Native Americans believed that the area was cursed and that anyone who entered it would never return. However, in the 20th century, the enigmatic disappearances that made the Alaska Triangle famous started occurring. During its flight from Anchorage to Montana in the Alaska Triangle on January 26, 1950, a military transport plane carrying 44 passengers disappeared without a trace. Despite an extensive search, no wreckage of the Douglas C-54 Skymaster or any bodies were found. David Downing, the leader of the Yukon Civil Air Search and Rescue Association, stated that whatever happened to them must have occurred rapidly, as there was no indication of engine trouble or any communication. Since then, many people have gone missing in the Alaska Triangle without explanation. On October 16, 1972, two influential political figures, U.S. House Majority Leader Hale Boggs and Alaska Representative Nick Begich, disappeared in a small plane while flying over the area. The aircraft and its occupants were never located, despite a massive search effort. All were later declared deceased. Numerous unexplained disappearances in the Alaska Triangle have led to various theories about what could have caused them. Some people think a powerful magnetic force in the area could be responsible for planes and ships going off course. Others suggest the possibility of extraterrestrial entities or the spirits of the native Alaskans who once lived there. According to local legends, a Sasquatch creature also terrorizes towns. One example is Portlock, a settlement on the southern edge of the Kenai Peninsula that was abandoned in the 1950s after villagers were reportedly attacked and killed by an unknown creature they called the Nantinak. Not only are there supernatural theories, but there are also logical explanations for the disappearances in the Alaska Triangle. The region is infamous for its harsh weather conditions and challenging terrain, which can cause significant obstacles for search and rescue teams. Furthermore, the expansive wilderness can cause people to become lost and confused, mainly if they are unfamiliar with the area. The enigma of the Alaska Triangle and the cause of the disappearances in the region remains a mystery. While some theories may seem implausible, it is evident that something peculiar is happening there. We may never know whether it's due to supernatural forces or the harsh wilderness of Alaska.
All right. Thank you, Steve Stockton from Among the Missing, for another great spooky story. If you want more, just head on over to youtube.com/Among the Missing and hit subscribe today. From the missing to the mysterious, Courtney Marcassani returns for the UFO report.
Nobody's gonna know. They're gonna know.
All right, Courtney, I'm putting my game face on, my journalistic hat on, because I'm coming into this UFO report extremely upset. Extremely upset. And I know you know why, so we're going to get right to it. And it has to deal with the Pentagon and Arrow, where they are deciding which journalists they will allow into a press conference in order to have a little chat about UFOs, UAP research. And I'm curious, before I go off of my rant here, what your thoughts are about Susan Goff controlling the media. Because here's the one thing that I always say. When you control the media, you control the message. And it is scary when a government department is controlling the media in this situation. What is your thoughts, sir, Courtney? We'll get you to unmute your mic.
I think it is the height of irresponsibility and so hypocritical of Susan Goff to have a press, like meet the press style event on the Arrow report, and yet not invite News Nation special correspondent Ross Coldhart, who covered the story, who broke the story, who interviewed and brought to America, whistleblower David Grush. And so he should have been there. He's earned the right and the privilege to be in that room. So that's my first bone of contention. I'll put it back to you because I have others, but that's my first one.
Yeah, and apparently News Nation is very upset about this. They did an entire story on this on their network, basically saying that if 60 Minutes or other people are on there that haven't really been covering the story, it's a little bit of an insult. It's an insult to any type of medium that really hasn't covered this subject. And I think what they're trying to do here, courtesy of Susan Goff, or Goff, however you want to pronounce her name. I think it's incredulous when the media has a right to be there. When you are talking about national security, when you are talking about anything to do with the public, that's what the media's role is. And some people, like Ross Coulthart, still do their job that way. It's not about infotainment. It's about covering an important story here that obviously Go wants the most, I'm going to say, unrealistic journalists to be in there. She doesn't want people of knowledge in there. And there's a lot of big people and a lot of big names that are being turned down, especially for the UFO community. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of the journalistic integrity that somebody like Ross Coulthart has, even George Knapp, in regards to being shut out of this story. I mean, nobody that we know that's been covering this story from our side that is a true journalist. I'm not saying the fake ones who self-title themselves. I'm saying the real journalists that are out there that do this for a living. And we have a few. We have Leslie Keene. We have Ralph Blumenthal, Ross Coulthart, George Knapp, just to name a few. None of them were invited. And I would like somebody to ask Susan Goff why she chose this direction. I think it's a legitimate question that needs to be asked.
I think it is too, but who in goodness's name will be able to ask that question of her? I mean, people send her questions all the time, and her pat response and answer is, "I'm sorry, I don't have anything for you on that issue." I mean, she just responds with these bland, zero comments where it's just like, automaton almost, like, "Sorry, I don't have anything for you on that. I don't have anything on that." And so I'm sure she's going to send something back if someone's bold enough to question her. I think that we need to start looking at our own questions as to why. In the News Nation segment that I saw just before I was about ready to go on the air, somebody sent it to me, and I watched Ross answer Elizabeth Vargas' question, "Why do you think that you weren't invited? And why do you think that our organization, our news media outlet, News Nation, wasn't invited?" And he said, because he thinks that they are trying to block out, or basically box out, reporters that are going to ask the tough questions, that she's wanting people there that are just going to ask certain type of questions, or who knows? We don't even know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe they're only offering certain types of questions to the media that they can ask. We don't know. But he's pointing out the fact that these more seasoned journalists like himself, and George Knapp, and probably people like Leslie Keene, if they were invited, they would ask these pointed questions that they haven't been answering, and that they don't want to do that. That was his answer to that, which I think is, if they're not going to answer it themselves, if the Department of Defense isn't going to say why they're not inviting these groundbreaking journalists, then we have to start wondering to ourselves why. And it's part of the problem. If they would let them in the room and they could ask the questions that they want to ask, we wouldn't have to be, wondering why the secrecy, why the veil, why the closed door. It looks like it's, the history coming back to haunt us with Blue Book. And I agree with George Knapp, because he said that, this whole thing with Arrow is starting to look like another project Blue Book. He said that, and I think he's absolutely on point with it.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And you should never stymie the journalists from covering a story. And if any other news outlet, like if this was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, before we started this infotainment, we're choosing political sides crap that journalists shouldn't be doing, we would be looking at a national story here about journalists and journalist sites or journalist news outlets being shut down from a government program. That would never fly. This is something that should be a national news story, that journalists were shut out from a public meeting and only a select few were chosen. Why did they only choose a few? The public has
chosen, because I've asked folks, like, do we know who was there? Can we confirm who was actually have been on there. Now, Nicole mentioned in the live comments here that Matt Laszlo is one of these people, and I agree. He is one of these people, but he should be invited. Is he invited? We don't know. I'm sure he would say if he was. He's starting to, get more insider and be asking questions. He's one of the people that asked Luna if she saw the video of the bodies, and she said no comment. So he's getting close on things. I just think it's really interesting that Lou Elizondo came out today on Twitter and said, hey, like, don't get disheartened. We're working on this. There are people underneath the waves getting into Congress, and they're being made aware of this. And so there's some solace, I think, that he came on Twitter and made that comment to kind of boost people's spirits and morale, because this whole thing with the journalist just goes to show that if you don't have watchdogs in the community pointing it out and really being critical of this administration, then they would just keep on doing the same. So we need to point it out, and we need to let them know that the UFO community won't be denied.
Lots of rumors about what was being discussed in there, whether it was meeting of the new Aero department head, whether it was gaining new UFO stories and access to what they know or don't know. And it's coincidental that Sean Kirkpatrick, your favorite human being, wrote another article today regarding the fact that we got to study UFOs and stop with conspiracy theories. The first thing that caught me with that headline by Sean Kirkpatrick was the fact that in his headline he wrote UFOs, not UAP.
I saw that. Yeah. But did you also say that he was basically saying that this is a bunch of people talking, they have no facts? This is one of the things he said in the article in Scientific American. They have no facts. They're going to their first cousin's cousin and, having conversations. They don't have any facts or any evidence. And that is just blatantly not true. That's not true. I mean, so him coming out there just shows the aggressive stance against the people who have testified to this, like the whistleblowers. I mean, that is a slap in the face to the whistleblowers. And how about the Eglin Air Force classified stuff coming out? And this was something that Matt Gaetz talked about in the hearing and broke ranks and talked about what happened at Eglin Air Force Base when they went down there to talk to whistleblowers. So this has now come all the way back around since the hearing last year, where the report has actually been released. And I'm thinking to myself, well, thank goodness there are people in the community that are following up with this kind of thing. I think it hit Black Vault today. I had it sent to me by 3 different people saying, hey, look, it's out. And, the Eglin Air Force Base stuff that Matt Gaetz testified to at the hearing was that the UFOs were there at the entrance to the base. That's what he broke ranks on, that said that they were there waiting during, I think it was a military training exercise, that they were already there. And so it's a similar pattern that we've seen in other military reports, that these UFOs show up at the base and they jam radar and other things that show their intelligence. So I don't know if the Eglin classified stuff that just has been released or what could be released in the FOIA will be discussed at the Aero meeting, but I think it probably has a lot to do with the report. I did have some sources tell me that they believe that the Aero report is probably coming out Friday, and that they said that the prediction would be that it would be after the State of the Union address. That's the other part of that, the timing wise, that seems to make sense. It was just an opinion, but I wanted to mention that on the news. The other thing that I think would be really, really newsworthy is if Biden in the State of the Union talks about UAPs. He might mention UAPs. That was another prediction by one of my sources. So that would be really cool if that happens.
Well, let's read a little bit of this article here. It says, little else titillates and piques national interest like unidentified flying objects and space aliens. After more than a century of films featuring intelligent creatures from other worlds, and over 7 decades after the U.S. government began investigating them, UFOs remain a flashpoint for conspiracy theorists and science deniers. Ouch, there's a nice shot right there.
Yeah, he said science deniers, which basically puts us into fake news category. Yep.
By any name, UFOs or UAP conjure the most vivid images and plots allowed by Hollywood and novels alike. Who doesn't want to believe? However, reality, as inconvenient as it can be, remains fundamental. In 2022, Congress found the courage to put into law the creation of the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, otherwise known as AARO, jointly managed by the Department of Defense and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Its mission is quite straightforward: apply unbiased scientific method and intelligence tradecraft to review existing information and data on historical UAP and investigate new data as these are provided to the office from military, federal, state, and local entities, as well as private citizens. He goes on to say, unfortunately, it also meant to investigate a conspiracy saturated with the distrust between our legislative and executive branches. It is time for the American people to understand and for the DOD, ODNI, and Congress to step up to the plate and enable AARO to finish its mission absent of this distraction. AARO's interest remains ongoing concern to our national security enterprise, particularly when the phenomena are observed near our nation's sensitive military and critical infrastructure facilities. If he actually opened his eyes, he would learn that it's not just around military bases this is happening.
Oh, I
It's all
know.
over.
And how about him saying finish the mission? I mean, so many people have gone on the record today saying, what is he trying to say with this whole finish the mission thing? You know,
Yeah.
it's just ludicrous. And it's making a mockery. It's making a mockery of the whole process, and just going to show that, you know, having set up this office in the first place has just led us down to the bottom, to the dregs. Because when you look at the UAP task force, all that was involved with that and the evidence that was brought forth and everything else, including David Grush coming out and recognizing the writing was on the wall with his own career, that he wasn't going to be able to go anywhere further after having what evidence he did have and the witnesses he did have, and took it to the ICIG. It's just incomprehensible to me that Sean Kilpatrick would turn around now and say, oh, let's finish the job. Well, yeah, let's finish the job. Let's admit that you denied, or you're currently denying, a reality that these whistleblowers were brought to you, and you're now saying that they aren't part of the evidence, or that their evidence that they've provided isn't real. It's conspiracy. It's really divisive. It's very divisive, and it's not helpful.
Well, let's continue with that divisiveness, because I love this next shot he gives. Many outside observers, nonetheless, have criticized AARO as supposedly part of a continuing government cover-up of the existence of aliens. Interestingly, they have not provided any verifiable evidence of this, nor are some of the more outspoken willing to engage with the office to discuss their positions or offer up the data and evidence they claim to possess. Too often, these critics and their supporters, that's all of you listening to us and many others, let's see, where are we here? Rely on secondhand friend of a cousin reporting with no personal firsthand knowledge or rigor in their critical thinking. Some claim that those with firsthand knowledge of this supposed cover-up have related to AARO, but no source in my tenure as director of the office had firsthand knowledge of anything to do with an alleged reverse engineering program of extraterrestrial spacecraft. He's basically saying the entire field is a bunch of bogus storytellers right there.
We know, okay, that the whistleblower that you and I have vetted, okay, I've met him. Okay, I've gone and met him in person and had multiple meetings with him and interviewed him and checked his story with multiple sources and say, yes, he's for real. He testified with Grush, or after Grush at the same time period. He testified as a firsthand witness that he interfaced with NHI. Okay, that was testified to. Sean Kilpatrick would have had to know about that testimony, but yet he's just discarding it. He's just discarding it and telling us all in the public that we're the storytellers, we're the conspiracy theorists. Whereas on this show, on Spaced Out Radio, we took it seriously. You know, we interviewed him. Now we know, after talking with him as of last week, it's okay to say that he's going to be coming out as the next witness. There's another witness coming out. And so his process has been approved. So he will be able to hopefully testify in the next hearing that comes up. And I hope that he does, if it's safe for him to do that.
We're going to continue with this when we return on Spaced Out Radio. Courtney Marcassani and the UFO Report is right here, right now. We say we'll be right back on the mighty SOR. Powerful. Dropping elbows tonight, Court. Dropping elbows.
Come on. We know that he's covering it up. We know, you and I know firsthand that he's covering it up. Sean Kilpatrick is lying to the public right now by saying that they don't have any evidence. There's a firsthand witness testimony. The NHI is here. They're here already.
Yes.
And so that's groundbreaking. That goes beyond, you know, any one person or any one whistleblower. And that's why the whistleblowers are working to try to get this out. And so he's just trying to stop the tide from turning.
I think what he's trying to do is stop the egg from that's about to be splashed on his face. And you know what? This time, it's always good to say, hello, how are you? And welcome to all the agents and agencies around listening in to Spaced Out Radio tonight. If you want to know more, just give us a call sometime. Just ring us on up. Ring those phones. You already know the number. We don't need to provide it to you. And, you know, just chat with us. You know, I'll start a fire. We can make it romantic. Come on over. SOR HQ. I got a big fire pit. So thank you to the agents and agencies tuning us in.
I had some really interesting conversations today and calls today, and you know, even received some text from the whistleblower sending me information, which I appreciate. But the good news was I already had it. So I was like, oh, well, I have this already. It was the Eglin. It was the Eglin report. And of course, we all heard about the Eglin issue when we were at the hearing. And I talked about it actually with you shortly after when we did the post hearing on Spaced Out Radio. So it's coming full circle. You know what Matt Gaetz leaked out in that hearing, and it was a bombshell at the time, you know, that the whistleblowers had UFOs there at the base, and now it's come out again. And so people are discouraged because of what Sean Kilpatrick is doing. But I think Lou Elizondo coming out today was basically saying, don't be discouraged. People in Congress know now, and we're going to move forward. And so I think that was a positive thing, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, Sean Kirkpatrick needs a little bit of El Ovni Volador time. That's what I'll say. By the way, I got a haircut today.
Good for you.
Yeah, we're getting long here. Getting long. I'm going to leave my hat off for a while.
It's a 23-page document, the Eglin report is, and it's a PDF, and you can download it, and it has all the different groups that are involved in it. It says on the cover page that there is some information that's being withheld because of security and classified issues, and also personal issues of the people involved. But otherwise, you can see drawings of the UFO. You know, the witness basically says that it was as big as the Apollo craft, and that, you know, it had red and orange lights on the bottom, like orb light colored lights. I mean, it's interesting. Did you get a chance to read it yet?
No, I have not.
Here, let me read you the declassified summary. On the
Wait until we start. Wait until we
do you
start.
want to wait until we get back on the air? Okay, I can do that. I have it pulled up. Just let me know.
All right, perfect. Yeah, Dave's got troll hair right now.
Oh, you kind of do.
I do.
You kind of do.
What?
That's right.
This
I
brings
agree.
5'11" now. I'm a 5'11" now.
Oh my God! And somebody else said Papa Smurf. That's one of my favorite lines when somebody asks, "Are we there yet?" I always pull out the Papa Smurf line. Does anybody remember what Papa Smurf used to say? I don't know if it was Papa, but it was one of them. Come on, does anybody remember? We'll wait until the end. I'll share it at the end.
Growing out my hair again.
How long are you going to go with it?
Oh, not much longer, like maybe another inch. Hi, Lex Diaz. How you doing?
I saw you had Chris Bartell on. How did that go? I love that guy.
It was fantastic.
Yeah?
My first time in a deep conversation with him. It was great. All right, Court, 5 seconds here. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears. Reminder to all of you that if you missed most of this show or others, all of our archives are always free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We are talking about Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, former head of Aero, releasing another long diatribe on Siam.com. And this goes about conspiracy theorists are ruining ufology. Well, that's what ufology and the UFO study is all about, Doc. Courtney Marcassani is here. Courtney, I want to get your opinion on this because we're going to read a little bit more of this article before we move on.
Okay.
He says, Aero continues to offer anyone an opportunity to provide their personal knowledge of an alleged program involving extraterrestrials for the record in a safe and non-adversarial environment. Really? Whistleblowers have come out and talked about their aliens. All right. We know that. We do. All right. It remains perplexing that some critics are hiding behind their own desk of secrecy and legal maneuvering, refusing to engage with the Aero when the office has been given full authority by Congress, DOD, ODNI, and others in the interagency process to review all information regardless of its classification while legally protecting those who provide it. Here's the line that gets me. If people claim to have evidence involving aliens, they need to come forward to Aero to enable the office to investigate it. Otherwise, hearsay in a scientific and fact-based investigation serves only as a distraction. Well, if you have reports from pilots who claim they've seen things, that's eyewitness testimony. It's not 100% legit. So why are you taking those reports, but you're not understanding other reports that whistleblowers and others have allegedly reported to you, Dr. Kirkpatrick, but you are denying that you ever received the information? Courtney, your thoughts?
Well, I think if you look at the takeaways of that article and his major points, one, there's no aliens. That's one of the first things he says in the article and emphasizes. There are no aliens. And these people, these conspiracy theorists, they believe in aliens. And so they're ruining this whole issue because they're like devout believers that there's aliens. So that's his first message that he's crafting. The second one is that he's saying we don't have any information. We don't have any evidence. And so that's the second part. And then the third part, I think his, big flourish, if you want to call it that, is that he's just going back to the well, saying that these individuals are using the old game of telephone. I mean, that's essentially, I'm paraphrasing, that's essentially what he's saying. They're talking to their first cousin and getting a story and it's this and that. That's not true. We know investigative journalists, like the leaders we just mentioned, we just gave a laundry list of who all of them are, who have risked their careers to pursue this larger story, have gained traction and brought evidence and have actually brought us to Congress with all of it. So we know that his points they're a wash. They're not real. You have to be in this field and study it and look at the evidence, as most of us have up until this point, to see that there is so much evidence. There's a plethora of evidence. The citizen hearing brought evidence. Now this new hearing with the whistleblower brought evidence. There's hopefully going to be another hearing with more evidence. And so he's just digging himself deeper in. So it's kind of perplexing to me, honestly, that he won't budge even just a little. He's doubling down and saying, nope, these people are just over here just about aliens, and there's no aliens. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but I believe that there are. And I've heard it from a good source who has shown me his badges, and I checked his credentials and checked with people and heard and found out through multiple sources that he is for real. And he is testifying to the fact that he engaged in communication face-to-face with an NHI. So what is Sean Kilpatrick not going to let that come out? That would be the greatest disservice he could do as a former government employee if he does. And that's okay. That could be what he's setting this all up for, setting the table for him to not even be able to testify. We have to look at that, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to end the Kirkpatrick talk by reading this second to last paragraph that he wrote, because this is the real shot over the bow. While future book deals or selling a story to Hollywood may be hard to resist for some, they are not what this effort is about. Sensationalism and the politicization of science do not aid in finding the truth. While everyone wants an answer, the truth will take time. Physics cannot be reinvented to fit a desired outcome, and analytic conclusions cannot be made based on questionable data and the word of credible witnesses alone. And when the data does not fit your theory, the theory is wrong, not the data. That is a shot over Grush's bow, Lou Elizondo's bow, and any other whistleblower who is ready to come out.
Well, look, before we even got to this point, what did people have? We only had entertainment, really, and investigative journalists doing stories with either witnesses of the phenomenon, trying to get classified materials out, speaking with witnesses who were in the programs or in black budget projects. I mean, that's all we had was entertainment, honestly. For people that were interested in this field, we couldn't really get enough of the actual entertainment if people were putting out good documentaries. I mean, for goodness sake, Gary Nolan was in a documentary about the Atacama being. So this was the only way for scientists and journalists to get information out to the public about this. So the fact that he's just calling it all BS, for lack of a better word, it's ridiculous, because that whole field of entertainment is what got us to where we are today. So I'm not saying every person who gets in a movie is right. I'm not saying every person in their story is completely factual. I'm not saying that, but I am saying the field of entertainment has helped us and has helped the wave push through the silence and the secrecy.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? The people in this field should love the fact that Kirkpatrick is really, really pushing himself to the brink. It seems like he's going to have a nervous breakdown over all of this. It really does.
He might, because you know what? He I think probably got a lot of accolades being in that office and doing the work and starting it, and now he's just getting torn down. So if any part of his ego was involved in the rise up of carrying that mantle, it's definitely being torn down right now. So he's got to have either told himself that he's right and he believes what he's saying, or he's working against the community to, in his mind, probably feel like it's common sense. Whereas the rest of us who are on this other side saying, how can you deny what evidence you have? It doesn't make any sense to us because we're following the issue closely. I mean, I think most Americans probably aren't, but I think in global terms, everybody is, even if you're not an American paying attention to this issue in your own government. I think people, I mean, look at Ross. He's an Australian journalist who's broken this story. I mean, there's so many people from other countries and internationally interested in what's happening with us right now. So I think Sean Kilpatrick actually is like a laughingstock internationally. And that's in it.
I agree. And let's get to what Lou Elizondo stated, because he felt empowered enough to send out a tweet on this. For those who don't know who Elizondo is, he's the former head of what they called the ATIP program, which was investigating UFOs back in the 2007 to 2012, 2014 range. He said, friends, it's always most quiet before the storm. There is no going back. Some members of Congress finally know what's going on. Some officials in the executive branch are scrambling. Efforts are underway below the wave tops, the result of which will break the surface and reveal themselves at a time of our choosing. This is going to be an interesting year for those who continue to obfuscate. We are working hard for you. What do you take from that statement?
I think that he is, okay, Sean Kilpatrick putting out these articles in Scientific American are a shot across the bow to Lou Elizondo. They are also a slap in the face to all the work that all the whistleblowers have done up until this point, which is, we owe them a debt of gratitude for all the work that they have done. And Sean Kilpatrick coming out and making these statements is just a shot at Lou Elizondo. So I think he probably had enough and decided, you know what, I'm going to answer back. It's like this game of brinksmanship that's going on between these groups. And so I was, for one, glad to see it. I mean, I was on another show this morning, not this morning, but this afternoon with Calling All Beings. And he came on the show, Lou did, and he was in the comments. You would not believe how happy people were to see him just be in the comments section of the podcast. And I was like, whoa, this is really cool that he's in here. And so I'm hoping that we're going to see more of that he just starts stepping out into the community and stepping back into the light and talking about the documentary, talking about who's in it, because he knows he's got an ace up his sleeve. He knows what's in his documentary. He knows what he has. We don't know. I mean, I think we're fortunate enough to know. I do know some stuff, but with Lou in that other chat room, I wasn't gonna say it, because that would basically be outing, the people that are in his movie. But I do know they're of high standing. I know there's one that I got, two sources that said this one person was in it, and it's just incredible if true. And I think that it will be a major breakthrough in media for the community. And so he probably felt compelled to answer Sean Kilpatrick's negative diatribe.
I think this was Lou playing the calm before the storm, as he wrote right off the bat. I'm sure inside he was steaming. He was probably fuming at the comments of Kirkpatrick. And I know in talking to people, there's no love lost between the two. They don't like each other. And I'm going to say in that fight, I would take Elizondo. If they were in the octagon, I would take Elizondo on that.
Are you kidding me? Break the wrist and walk away. I wouldn't get in the ring with Lou. I mean, no way. I mean, Kilpatrick will really have to have some balls. I mean, he obviously does, because he's doubling down on all these statements that he's saying, which directly contradicts Lou's whole work experience and existence pretty much in intelligence and in OSAP and working with the CIA and everything else on these programs. So it's just, it's not only an insult, it's mud throwing. It's really mud flowing, throwing at Lou, and I just don't see the sense of it. It's really ridiculous. So I'm glad Lou came out and came on the record. It was really inspiring for people like us who are just trying to work day to day and, see which way everything's flowing and give it to listeners and your audience. This is, it's just difficult to see these kind of wars going on because it makes it makes you feel like disclosure is going to be set back because of it.
I agree. All right, let's get to an article you wanted to read. We got about 7 minutes here.
This is just the declassified summary. I'm going to read it really fast, okay? On the 26th of January, 23, a UAS F pilot gained radar lock on 4 separate UAP. Upon approach, the pilot was able to make visual contact and employ sensors to obtain a screen capture of the first of these objects. The remaining 3 were only detected by radar. UAP-1, likened to an Apollo spacecraft, in size and shape, with an orange-reddish illuminated rounded bottom with a top section a 3-dimensional cone shape comprising gunmetal gray segmented panels. UAP-1 operated at an altitude of 16,000 above ground level AGL. The second and third UAPs were noted at altitudes of 17,000 to 18,000. The fourth was lost from radar and no altitude was noted. Moreover, no airspeeds were noted for any of the UAP in this report. Of note, upon closing to within 4,000 feet of UAP-1, the radar malfunctioned and remained disabled for the remainder of the event. Post-mission investigation revealed that the circuit breaker had triggered, but that maintenance technicians were unable to conclusively diagnose the fault. So that sounds familiar. That's just the last page of that 23-page document.
I hear you. Why is this important to today's message? Why does this seem to play out? Is it historic? Is it something that we should be paying attention to from the past that leads to the future?
I think that anytime, if you start to pay attention to anytime some of these things come out, the reports come out, there's information for the public about UAP or witness, you see this contra, right? It's like a countermeasure almost by the other side, like Sean Kilpatrick releasing these articles, right before the Eglin report got released. So it's almost like it's working in a sense because it makes us focus on the fact that they're denying the reality while also we're getting evidence of the reality. This is a classic example of it.
We have 5 minutes to go here. Do you expect, with everything going on with this report that you just read at Eglin, that there is more hiding around that area than what we know?
Yes.
Like, do you think that these are common occurrences there?
Yes. Yes, and I think that that's why Matt Gaetz broke ranks the way he did to get some of it out during the hearing, so he could get it on the record, so that they couldn't hide it or bury it, under the minutia that we're seeing of paperwork and classified programs.
Okay, where do you think this stacks up on the reports that we have heard? Because Matt Gaetz, Anna Luna, and Tim Burchett, and many others are seeming to really be digging into these reports that are happening at military installations within their electoral areas. I think that with Matt Gaetz, if I'm correct on this one, he had numerous people come to him on this one, especially soldiers, come to him on this one to say, this is what's going on. This is what's being covered up on the base. And he had many representatives from that base actually show up at his office to explain what was going on.
Yeah, I think it is. I do think it is in certain districts, and definitely with bases, you see more testimony and more classified stuff coming out. You also reminded me of another news story that we didn't cover recently that came out about, I'm not sure how to say his name, if it's Ogles. Did you see that as well? That there was an Ogles who went and received information about UAPs recently. And I wanted to look him up. I'm doing a quick search right now. We need to cover that as well. Tennessee Congressman, I think, Ogles, yeah. He helped to form the caucus. And so he also represents Nashville. So we need to cover that. Ogles has also come into it. And so is Burleson, so is Gates, so is Luna. And so when Lou Elizondo was talking about these people, these are the people that they're getting to that have an open mind and are willing to listen, not only about the testimony from the whistleblowers, but some of them were even, given information classified with Mannheim recently. And so we know that there are specific Congress people who are aware. But I think that you're going to see historically people like Harry Reid, who was able to first break this issue open. He had special contacts like with Bigelow, right? And he was in aerospace, and that's how they got the money from that lobby. So when you start to look at it, it's all connected. And some of them are connected to private industry, but some of them are connected to military as well.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because we really, really want to make sure that this news is brought to the public. There are not a lot of outlets that are going to be covering stories like this for whatever the reason is. And we have to continue to be diligent in our work and almost dogged to the point that we're able to bring this story out to many people out there. And look, you don't have to believe in David Grush. You don't have to believe in Lou Elizondo. You could believe that they're fakes, they're wherever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The fact is they are moving the ball forward. They are moving the ball forward, and they have had private conversations with people who do have very powerful positions within government. And in the end, this is a battle, in my opinion, Courtney, as we've got about a minute and a half to go here. This is a battle between people who are elected to represent the public and those who are trying to protect the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's certainly one division between the people that come into this who are elected officials who want to do good and eventually get eaten up through it because they don't realize the secrecy and how deep it goes. Obviously, the military and industrial complex has been foundational to a lot of this, of what we're talking about. And so it's so deep. It's been deep the whole time. And so there are some things that they're just never going to disclose. They're not going to. But I do think that with the whistleblower movement, if I could call it a movement, because it certainly seems like a grassroots movement within military and people and witnesses coming together and helping one another, I do think that it's shedding light on a lot of it in a new way, because there's always been conspiracy about all this stuff, but now we're actually getting some traction. Whether that traction will be able to be longstanding yet, I think it's probably too soon to tell, because there's certainly a counter effort going on. And the whistleblowers are saying that too. It's obviously oppositional, coordinated against them. So, where is that coming from? I don't know.
Courtney, I want to say thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight for another great UFO report. You're the best. Thank you very much. As we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, who's rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking in and out of every single show. Excuse me, get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter or X, hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. All right, I'm done. I'm done. That's it. It's over.
Good job.
Yeah. I want to give you a couple of claps.
Hey, thanks. I stayed on top of it today. I didn't lose sight of the news.
You were amazing as per usual.
Well, I thought it was exciting that Lou Elizondo came onto the other radio. I was kind of hoping he would come on tonight.
I know.
Well, it's like a blob sighting. We had a Lou sighting. He
True.
popped up. Let's hope he pops up in our space. I think that I'm going to be able to hopefully say soon who's in the documentary.
Well, that would be cool.
I'm going to try to get permission because I know who it is. I know who the big person is. It's really awesome. I just want to blurt it out, but I can't.
You are just so dogged.
I don't know what's happening, but there's definitely doors opening up. It must be my country charm and my winning personality.
Your wooey personality?
My winning personality. I don't know. Definitely I have good sources and they're sharing and they're helping me out. So I'm always grateful to them. So grateful. They're helping out. They're directly getting information out for our listeners on SOR. So that to me is like really incredible.
It very much is. It very much is. Yeah.
They want the information to get out to your audience so that they know what's going on. I mean, that is cool. That is so cool. And it's so counter to what's going on with Susan Goff right now. It gives me hope too, that people are helping. They want information to get out. So we'll just keep pushing it. We'll just keep doing our thing. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Baking tips. If you do want baking tips, you can go on Pinterest and see what Susan Goff is offering up.
Oh, really? She does baking tips?
Apparently.
Can I be like, hey, and can I have a side of UAP with that?
She'll be like, what?
Can I have the UAP special sauce and an ingredient?
Right.
This is kind of funny. I'll say this really quick and then I'll let you go to bed. I was researching a book, a potential book about Alice B. Toklas. She was a writer and she used to make these special brownies at parties for all these literary people to come over, and they'd always be like, are they the Alice B. Toklas brownies? And she would make pot brownies. And so I found this whole article. I don't know if it was in Vanity Fair or where it was, but that was like, they had the Alice B. Toklas special brownie recipe. And it was part of her like tribute because she had passed away. And so anyway, I thought that was hilarious. So I could go to Susan Goff and say, hey, can I have the special brownie recipe with a side of UFO? Hook me up.
In my opinion, Susan Goff is the type of lady who drives a brown 4-door Volvo.
You know she does. You know she does. You know she does. And she puts the snow tires on like outside of DC where they don't even have any snow. Mm-hmm. You know it. I see a Volvo too, Dave. I see a Volvo too.
Oh, yeah. She's the type of lady who buys winter snow tires for living in Florida. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like winterizes the house, puts plastic over the furniture. You know the kind.
Furniture, for sure. If I ever get a chance to interview her, I'm going to ask her that. Courtney Marcassani stated that you put plastic over your furniture. Is this true?
And that you might also have a special brownie recipe to share with the community. Mm-hmm. Oh, too much fun. Too much fun. All right. Well, I'll let you go to bed, sir. Thanks for the fun time. And thanks for hosting me for another great news segment.
We'll see you on Friday, my friend.
You betcha.
Take care. Good night. And to the rest of you, we're going to say good night as well. Who's our guest tomorrow night? Joe Mergia is going to be here to talk some ufology from the Twitterverse or the Xverse, because he is one of the best haired people in ufology. Really is. And Joe's a great guy. I really enjoy his company. He actually attended our fan party last year in Las Vegas. He's going to try and get up to Reno as well if he can make it, not working. But he's going to be our guest tonight. So we're going to continue with the UFO talk tomorrow as well. So make sure you check it on out. We'd greatly appreciate that. And thank you tonight to Major Lee, T-Bone, Jenny, Lavira, CS, Dutch Hank, Kim, and Aloha Dave. Greatly appreciate the love and support, everybody. We will see you all in the morrow. So much better than saying tomorrow. In the morrow. Good night.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.